Chapter 842, Diamond Ape King, 8. Then, his body slowly fell to the ground. But the Diamond Ape King still had indissoluble anger. When it took a large stride to spring forward, one huge foot stepped down in an instant. That Luo family's bodyguard was immediately squashed into a meat patty. Completely couldn't tell the original features of the body. Too bloody, too brutal, too monstrous. Su Luo turned her head around, saw this scene, and her expression immediately changed. Ziyan's face also became somewhat pale. Clearly, she nearly vomited. Quickly run. Su Luo pulled heavily at Ziyan. Ziyan, with a serious expression, nodded her head. At this moment, the Diamond Ape King was very close to the procession of people. At the end of the procession, the Luo family's bodyguards who ran the slowest, one after another, was disposed of by the Diamond Ape King. They died in various horrible fashions, tragic and a shocking sight to behold. Didn't know how much time had passed. Up ahead was still darkness without an end. And this procession actually only had 4 people remaining. The people that remained were Su Luo, Ziyan, Luo Haochen, and Luo Die. Those Luo family's bodyguards were all smashed to death by the Diamond Ape King. They didn't even have the strength to resist. Brother, help me. Sob. The Diamond Ape King was already really close to Luo Die, so close as to be almost within reach. Luo Die could almost smell the bloody scent on the Diamond Ape King's body. At this time, Luo Haochen was already too busy attending to himself. On his usually icily arrogant and self-confident face appeared a fine layer of sweat. However, he didn't even have the time to wipe it away. He gathered all of his strength to pull Luo Die forward. Hearing Luo Die's plaintive crying sounds, Su Luo didn't feel like gloating. On the contrary, she had a feeling of sympathy with a like-minded person in distress. After Luo Die was done for, very quickly, it would be their turn. No one could escape the Diamond Ape King's pursuit. Just at this moment, a trace of light suddenly appeared up ahead. Su Luo focused her sight and silently listened, and she actually heard the echoing sounds of a waterfall. Su Luo said to Ziyan, "Endure. Up ahead is a turn for the better." Ziyan clenched her teeth and nodded her head. Probably because of Luo Die's strong survival instinct, she quickly sprang forward, so that the Diamond Ape King couldn't grab her firmly. Very quickly, they reached the end of the dark cave. Up ahead really was a waterfall on top of a cliff. The overhanging cliff was divided into 2 parts. One side was on this end, the other side was at another end. In the middle, it was separated by a distance of 300 meters. Such a great distance, they couldn't fly. How could they run to the other end? Behind them, the Diamond Ape King was getting closer, his mouth breaking out in cold, devious laughter. The Diamond Ape King contemptuously looked at these ant-like humans. They actually made it work so hard to chase. It decided to dry them into human jerky and slowly gnaw on them to eat. Behind there was the Diamond Ape King guarding. Up front was an overhanging cliff that they couldn't see the end of. Presently in front of them was a desperate impasse, with no way out. What to do? A thread of worry flashed through Ziyan's eyes. The Diamond Ape King's strength was tyrannical, so high as to be unmeasurable. Even if they acted together, they wouldn't even be able to defend against one of its punches. Just at this moment, Luo Haochen noiselessly approached Su Luo from behind. From his sleeves, a thin vine immediately shot towards the opposite part of the overhanging cliff. "Go die." Luo Haochen pushed Su Luo towards the Diamond Ape King. Unfortunately for him, Su Luo had her guard up against Luo Haochen from earlier. The nothingness of space that enveloped her body hadn't been lifted entirely. So this push by Luo Haochen was directly placed on the wall of the nothingness of space. It seemed hard, but was also soft at the same time. What was this? Chapter 843, Diamond Ape King, 9. Luo Haochen couldn't describe what it felt like. He only knew that he couldn't even touch the edge of Su Luo's sleeve. And at this moment, Su Luo had flipped her body around and kicked Luo Haochen between his legs. Luo Haochen dodged this danger and slammed one palm strike towards Su Luo's back. But in front of Su Luo was the bottomless overhanging cliff. As a result, Su Luo was holding on to Ziyin, so they both fell down the bottomless cliff together. During the fall, Su Luo took out a dagger, directly cutting off the vine that Luo Haochen had attached to the opposite of the cliff. Would Su Luo fall to her death just like this? Naturally not. In her space was the red acacia tree that had just recognized her as its owner. This was a rare opportunity for it to show off. Therefore, just when Su Luo was falling down, a cyan-colored vine burst out from Su Luo's sleeve. The vine was thick and also strong, like a solid iron chain, firmly locking onto the huge boulder on the opposite of the cliff. Afterwards, Su Luo's two legs pushed off on the cliff wall, using this force of recoil to launch them towards the other side of the cliff. Su Luo and Ziyin shot like a meteor, across to the opposite cliff. Then what about Luo Haochen and Luo Die? Luo Haochen's vine got cut off by Su Luo. Immediately, he was so furious that his chest was about to explode. The Diamond Ape King witnessed the two human ants fall off the cliff, and fury burst out from its eyes. The humankind that he wanted to dry into jerky unexpectedly fell down the cliff. These humankind in front of it were simply seeking death. As a result, Diamond Ape King launched a heavy palm strike towards Luo Haochen. However, who would have thought that the delicate Luo Die was also a wood-fire dual elemental mage? Just when Luo Haochen was about to be smashed to death, Luo Die grabbed onto Luo Haochen and pulled. With the wind from this heavy palm strike, Luo Die carried Luo Haochen to fly backwards. Close to the 300 meters of distance, Luo Die and Luo Haochen skimmed over to the other side. However, just when they were about to reach their destination, Su Luo and Ziyin also chased them from the rear. Compared to Luo Die's thin green vine, the red acacia tree's vine was much more solid and thick. Didn't know whether the red acacia tree was trying to compete or not. A leaf on its vine shot towards Luo Die's vine. It was merely a leaf. How serious could it be? This would be many people's way of thinking, including Luo Die. But Luo Haochen's expression suddenly changed. He quickly launched his own green vine, as it flew towards the opposite rock wall. Sure enough, as he expected, that very small leaf was sharper than a dagger. It cut through, from top to bottom, Luo Die's thin green vine, which was immediately cut into two pieces. Ah! Luo Die was so scared that her face became colorless. Fortunately, Luo Haochen was already prepared. When Luo Die's thin green vine was cut apart, his green vine had reached the opposite side, just at that moment. Therefore, they were able to escape the dangerous situation this time. After reaching the other cliff, Ziyin, your friend wants to court death. Up until now, Luo Haochen still didn't know Su Luo's name, and Su Luo was too lazy to tell him. Ziyin smiled coldly. Luo Haochen, who was it that kicked us down the cliff? Don't worry, this time's matter. I've remembered it all. Ziyin pointed to her own forehead. Luo Haochen was immediately speechless. At that time, the circumstances were special. It was life and death. Humph, offend our Luo family. No matter who you are, you will die for sure. Luo Die sent an icily arrogantly glance at Su Luo. She looked at Su Luo as if looking at a dead person. The corner of Su Luo's mouth hooked into a cold smile. The her right now wasn't the newcomer with no one to rely on, that daughter of a concubine from Su Manor. Want to kill her? You should reconsider her backing first. Su Luo swept a contemptuous glance at Luo Die. The wounds on Miss Luo's face seems to be very serious. It won't disfigure her face, right? Chapter 844, Diamond Ape King, 10. The last half of the sentence was something Su Luo said to Ziyin. Which woman wouldn't treasure their appearance? Su Luo purposely said these words to stab at Luo Die's heart. Ziyin understood Su Luo completely, so she happily continued. How could it not? I feel that it is certain that face would be disfigured. Can't you see it? That wound is so deep that you can see the bones, shining white and dripping with blood. Just looking at it is nauseating. Su Luo nodded her head to express her agreement, and she also moved far away from Luo Die, in a manner showing her disgust. So pitiful. Ziyin's expression was also full of pity. So young and appearance is already like this. She still hasn't even married yet. Too pitiful. After Luo Jie heard the two people going back and forth with being disfigured and how pitiful she was, she touched her face. It was bloody, and with a wow sound, she was immediately scared into crying. Luo Haochen glared at the two with displeasure. Speak less and no one would think you guys are mute. At the same time, Luo Haochen patted Luo Jie's shoulder. Don't worry, didn't Apothecary Long just produce a new medicine called Rebirth of Flesh Pill? Wait until your brother go back and demands one for you. Luo Jie, who originally was bawling, hearing this, she immediately stopped crying. She pitifully nodded her head. Brother must get one for Jie. Okay, brother guarantees it, Luo Haochen said with extreme confidence. Hearing this, the corner of Su Luo's mouth curved up slightly. Ever since the last time, when senior brother helped cure her enemies, the Lu family siblings whose hands were cut off, his heart felt very guilty. As a result, he swore that he would never refine Rebirth of Flesh pills again. And those Rebirth of Flesh pills that he had refined before were all in her hand. This guarantee by Luo Haochen was not a bit guaranteed. Although the four people were divided into two groups, but at least there wasn't a life and death battle between them, so this situation could be regarded as quite calm. Just when Su Luo was about to look for a way out and try to leave lifting up her head, she immediately discovered the Diamond Ape King coldly standing in front of them. Its pair of eyes was staring fixedly at Su Luo. At this moment, among the four people, only Su Luo discovered this. Su Luo's body immediately froze. Su Luo subconsciously nudged Ziyin. What Ziyin, at a loss, turned her head around. Before the last word to finish her question could be spoken, her body also froze immediately. Diamond Ape King. How could it be here? Su Luo and Ziyin glanced at each other. Both of them had a threat of shock in their eyes. Such a far distance in the end. How did the Diamond Ape King get here? Seeing how Su Luo and Ziyin's body had stiffened in place, Luo Jie was just about to taunt them, however. As a person who had the weakest psychological strength, Luo Jie subconsciously screamed out loud. Quickly run. Su Luo grabbed Ziyin and took to her heels to run. Luo Jie, this idiot. Was there a person who would provoke the Diamond Ape King like this? Su Luo and Ziyin ran very quickly. However, the Diamond Ape King didn't move a bit. Very clearly, its real target was Luo Jie. Clearly, Luo Haochen also realized this point. He couldn't leave, just abandoning Luo Jie, this younger sister, and not help her. Therefore, he immediately pulled Luo Jie and turned around to chase after Su Luo's group. Even if they died, he must also drag them down to share the same fate. Brother, Luo Jie suddenly thought of something. She took out a dark wooden box from the bag she carried on her body and handed it over to Luo Haochen. You even took this? Luo Haochen exclaimed in surprise. I was afraid there might be danger, so I stole this from Grandpa's secret room. Luo Jie shrank her neck while explaining. Good, very good. Stole it well. Momentarily, Luo Haochen's mood became very good. The thing in the dark wooden box wasn't anything else, but a spirit pinball. Luo Haochen grabbed the spirit pinball with his hand, but his heart hesitated and was somewhat uncertain. Chapter 845. Moment Between Life and Death 1. In front of him was Ziyin's pair of people, whom he had a life and death enmity with. Behind him was the Diamond Ape King that pursued closely, unwilling to let go. In fact, Luo Haochen really wanted to smash the spirit pinball in his hands towards Ziyin and Su Luo pair. Brother. Luo Dai ran all the way in the back, being pursued by the Diamond Ape King without letting go. Letting you guys off lightly. Luo Haochen's gloomy and cold gaze glared at the two people up front. Then, he coldly snorted in his heart. If it were not for the Diamond Ape King chasing them from behind, he was itching to smash the two people in front of him to death. Seeing that the Diamond Ape King was about to grab Luo Dai's back, a touch of a fierce, severe expression flashed through Luo Haochen's eyes. The spirit pinball in his hand suddenly smashed towards the Diamond Ape King. Go die! Luo Haochen angrily roared. Su Luo and Ziyin's heart were jolted. When they turned their head around, they were in time to see the spirit pinball being tossed towards the Diamond Ape King's chest. The Diamond Ape King's body was cumbersome and not nimble enough. Thus, he was smashed by it. Basically, it was unable to hide nor avoid it. Boom! A loud sound echoed and rolled like an air wave. Luo Haochen was wrapped up high by the air waves and flung far away. At this moment, who knew where Luo Dai was already flung to? Even the Su Luo pair of people were also carried by the rushing air waves to knock their heads against a rock. When Luo Haochen smashed the spirit pinball, the place he chose was too timely. It was actually under a cave. For a moment, the earth quaked and the mountains shook. The entire mountain top violently shook. A countless number of boulders collapsed downwards like a landslide. The entire mountain top seemed to have been split in half. Su Luo crawled up and shook her head. Her eyes stared fixedly at the center of the blaze. Because she had smashed people 2 times, both times, she had smashed the opponent into a higher rank, helping her opponent skyrocket by 45,000 kilometers. As a result, Su Luo, with regards to using the spirit pinball and smashing others, didn't have a lot of self-confidence. Her pair of eyes stared intensely at the place where the blaze was ignited. Not long after, sure enough, the Diamond Ape King stood up. Although only one of its 2 heads remained, it still tenaciously stood up. Very clearly, this 9th-ranked spirit pinball did not kill it with the explosion. However, it seemed that it also didn't smash it to the next rank. From this, it could be seen that the Diamond Ape King's strength was far beyond the 9th rank. It stood up. A trace of astonishment flashed through Su Luo's heart. If you said that the Diamond Ape King was furious before, then now, it could only be described as crazy. Its pair of eyes became bloodshot like an ignited flame, making people's souls shudder and bodies stiffen. Its surroundings was filled with frightening fluctuations. At this moment, the Diamond Ape King was thoroughly enraged. Its furious pair of eyes glared rigidly at a place not far off. There, Luo Haochen was lying in the original spot, neither dead nor alive. Seeing the main culprit that cut off one of its heads, the Diamond Ape King was exceptionally furious. Ayo. It angrily charged. Its palm leaf, fan-like claws attacked towards Luo Haochen. Just at this moment, the corner of Luo Haochen's mouth hooked up into a fierce sneer. Another dark spirit pinball appeared in his hand. That's right, it was another spirit pinball. 10th-ranked spirit pinball. Explode. Luo Haochen shouted out loud. The spirit pinball directly smashed towards the Diamond Ape King. Along with the spirit pinball's approaching attack, a frightening aura shrouded the Diamond Ape King. A trace of alarm actually flashed through its pair of crazed eyes. However, it was too late. The 10th-ranked spirit pinball directly exploded on the Diamond Ape King's body. Boom, boom. It was another violent sound that made the earth quake and the mountains shake. A loud sound that frightened the skies, like waves of claps of thunder. At this moment, everyone's mind was violently jolted, their bodies swaying non-stop. Chapter 846, Moment Between Life and Death, 2. The other half of the mountain peak was also heavily split into 2. At this moment, within the mountain peak that had been leveled flat, a bright divine light suddenly shot towards the skies. The divine light was like a pillar of light bursting out, linking heaven and earth together. Afterwards, this divine light suddenly exploded. All kinds of brilliant rays of light were dazzling like fireworks. An endless amount of spirit force rushed to attack in all directions. The center of the divine light was like the eye of a hurricane, so tranquil that there wasn't even a breeze. However, the surroundings where the divine light exploded with huge energy pushed the waves of air, overflowing to the sky. A countless number of mountain ranges were instantly leveled flat. A countless number of birds and beasts were turned into ashes and bones. A countless number of millennium-old trees were burned until nothing was left. The only undisturbed place was the mountain peak that had been leveled flat, where Su Luo and the others were. A saffron yellow color appeared in the distant sky, as far as the eye could see. It even rendered people's figures in a hazy, light yellow color. In the end, what happened? It was simply too mystical. Su Luo looked on with a stupefied expression at the scene in front of her. At this moment, Luo Haochen also slowly crawled up. He had searched for a long time and finally found Luo Die's figure. With one move, he had lifted her up from among the ashes. Brother, Luo Die, who was covered in grime from head to toe, opened her eyes with great difficulty. She raised her eyes and saw Luo Haochen's worried expression. Luo Haochen patted away the dust on her body. The dust on her face made her look like a striped cat. Ziyin walked to Su Luo's side, and the corner of her mouth slightly pursed. That diamond ape king would die just like this? Perhaps. Su Luo's gaze looked to the place where the divine light was bursting out. Her eyes were profoundly mysterious. Ziyin said with some regret, "This was a magical beast at the peak of 9th rank. At the very least, we could have dug out a blue-colored crystal stone. A pity that the Luo family's brat would pick up this small advantage. Don't you feel it strange?" Su Luo frowned slightly. Just now, Luo Haochen had used 2 spirit pinballs in a row. Ziyin was usually smart. Just a hint was all she needed. That's right. If he had a spirit pinball since the beginning, he couldn't have been chased until this point and still not used it. If it was just one, then it would explain why he would save it to conserve his strength. But there were 2, Su Luo muttered to herself. Where did Luo Haochen get the second spirit pinball? Crash, just at this moment. In that pile of raging flames, a sinister magical beast crawled out. Heavens! Oh heavens! Ziyin was very stunned as she pointed at the slowly wiggling thing. She almost choked on her own saliva. Su Luo's eyes also narrowed instantly. Diamond Ape King! Luo Haochen cried out in alarm. His body couldn't help but to fall back. That pitch-black body with nearly 1/3 of it chopped off was standing up like an iron tower. If it wasn't the Diamond Ape King, then who else could it have been? Su Luo swallowed her saliva with great difficulty. Although half of the Diamond Ape King's body had been destroyed at this time, but very clearly, its strength was stronger than before. Its vicious nature as a magical beast, under Luo Haochen's provocations time and time again, it was thoroughly aroused. Bang bang bang, the Diamond Ape King was in a rage. It roared and shouted step by step. It walked towards Luo Haochen. Fortunately, it was looking for Luo Haochen. Su Luo and Ziyin, seeing that the situation was not good, immediately turned around and wanted to run. However, they tragically discovered this area's heaven and earth seemed to have been sealed by something. Unexpectedly, she could not run out at all. Domain. Ziyin had a startled expression. Damned Luo Haochen. He actually smashed the Diamond Ape King into the 10th rank. Now that it can erect and control a domain, we are completely doomed. Su Luo's expression also followed by changing slightly. If they couldn't escape, would they have to obediently wait until the opponent came to kill them? Chapter 847, Moment Between Life and Death, 3. Su Luo couldn't help but look at Luo Haochen. Under the forceful pressure the Diamond Ape King was exerting as it got closer step by step, Luo Haochen and Luo Die, the 2 siblings, retreated step by step. In front of the enormous Diamond Ape King, those 2 siblings were simply like ants, so insignificant as to be negligible and disregarded. Suddenly, the Diamond Ape King extended its heavy, huge, palm leaf and fan-like hands and slapped towards the 2 siblings. This palm was like 1,050 kilograms of thunder, as if it contained an endless amount of strength. Under this palm strike, would the 2 siblings die just like this? Su Luo's eyes squinted slightly. Suddenly, her heart had a sympathetic feeling for a person in similar distress. Just at this tense moment, suddenly a face appeared in the sky. A face that was around 60 years old, with features that somewhat resembled Luo Haochen. This face seemed to be gentle, but it gave people a feeling of strong deterrence. Ever since seeing that face, Su Luo felt her soul shuddering, as if she couldn't help but to kneel down and worship it. Just like the first time when she saw a beautiful teacher, that kind of feeling. Su Luo secretly guessed in her heart, this person's cultivation state ought to be on par with beautiful teacher, right? That face suddenly appeared, but was still unable to stop the crazed Diamond Ape King. That palm ultimately still slapped down. However, that face suddenly became furious. "Diamond Ape, you dare!" Before his voice could fade, his figure suddenly appeared. Wearing a light gray robe, an elderly man with an icy, arrogant expression appeared in front of everyone. One could only see his pair of hands form seals and shoot towards the Diamond Ape King. He had saved the siblings from this dangerous situation. "Grandfather!" Luo Die cried out, having been pleasantly surprised. Oh heavens! Grandfather had come. Grandfather had personally come. Luo Die was so emotionally moved that she nearly shrieked. Luo Haochen gave a sigh from finally being relieved of a burden. Grandfather was here. Then their little lives were saved. "This is the Luo family's esteemed elder, Luo Shengtian." Ziyan muttered in a low voice by Su Luo's ear. "He is worthy of being called the Great Shield of the Luo family." Luo Haochen definitely had a cry for help stone. In a life-and-death situation, he summoned his grandfather. Elder Luo's gaze swept Luo Haochen and Luo Die a glance. Soon after, his ice-cold gaze swept Su Luo and Ziyan a glance. His eyebrows slightly wrinkled. However, at this moment, the Diamond Ape King had already started to launch an attack at Elder Luo. As a result, he did not have the time to ask and take notice of anything else. The Diamond Ape King also knew that if he did not kill this damned old man today, then it would be the one that died. At this moment, Elder Luo and the Diamond Ape King had already begun to battle. The two exceptional experts fighting simply split the heavens and earth apart, making the earthquake and mountains shake. Rumbling sounds echoed in the surroundings, full of a desperate and harsh air. The two exceptional experts exchanging blows was similar to a real, windy, thunderous storm, resonating through heaven and earth. The palm chopped towards the mountain top, like being crushed by the blue dome of heaven. It also appeared to surge up violently like a tsunami. For a moment, rubble swirled in the air, yellow earth filling the whole sky. Their line of sight became fuzzy. They could only see in the distant horizon, two black dots intertwining and fighting as they passed. They only knew that their might was so strong as to be incomparable. The rest they were unable to understand from watching. Su Luo and the others, in front of these exceptional experts, were simply too weak. This was simply not a battle that they could participate in right now. These several people, one after another, tried finding a place for cover in order to avoid being dragged into this disaster. Just at this moment, the little divine dragon suddenly jumped out from Su Luo's arms. His tiny body leapt forward like lightning. Su Luo's expression immediately changed slightly. She lifted her hands, but was unable to catch the little divine dragon. As a result, she whispered, "Little foolish dragon, come back." However, this time, the little divine dragon only glanced back briefly at Su Luo. He only gritted his teeth and dashed forward. Chapter 848, Moment Between Life and Death, 4. Because there was something that was attracting him up front, and the place he wanted to go was actually the place where the two experts were fighting the most intensely. This was truly wanting treasures and not wanting life. Su Luo's eyes stared intensely at the little divine dragon. Her brows were knitted very tightly. What treasure is more important than your life? If this goes on, you will lose your little life. When the little divine dragon had glanced back just now, he transmitted to Su Luo that he needed to go grab some treasure. However, in Su Luo's heart, compared to her worry for the little divine dragon's safety, all treasures must stand aside. Su Luo was extremely worried, because outside, the mountain edge had collapsed, all kinds of substances and dust filled the sky. All kinds of rubble swirled in the air. The little divine dragon's hard pelt was still good, but Su Luo's defense would easily be broken. Just at this moment, Elder Luo sent a heavy fist smashing towards the Diamond Ape King. The violent surging strength was unblockable. Bang, a heavy noise sounded. The Diamond Ape King had been hit squarely by the fist, and its huge, iron tower-like body suddenly fell backwards and was launched out. Bang, 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 the Diamond Ape King's back hit the smooth wall of a mountain. However, didn't know what the Diamond Ape King had touched. Momentarily, a transparent layer of protective barrier appeared on that smooth wall. At this moment, a complicated pattern of a seal appeared on the mountain's wall. Now, this protective barrier with a force like a tsunami started to vibrate. Rays of light flashed that was exceptionally dazzling, so beautiful as to make it hard to open their eyes. This incomparably powerful pressure, in an instant, exploded forth. All of a sudden, the Diamond Ape King's body that had knocked against it seemed to have enraged the mountain wall. It was blasted to pieces by the wall. Fresh blood was like a flowery rain, swirling in the air. It dyed more than half of the mountain wall red. Seeing the Diamond Ape King's devastation, Su Luo and the others sucked in a cold breath of air. That mountain wall, in the end. What kind of heavenly and earthly secrets did it have? Unexpectedly, to have such a terrifying side? However, Elder Luo's eyes suddenly shone. Just at this moment, suddenly, lightning struck down from the clear sky. Rumbling sounds echoed and shook people's hearts, making them uneasy. An inscription slowly appeared on the wall of that mountain. A complicated paragraph appeared in front of everyone. Su Luo and the others were simply gaping dumbfoundedly at it. No one would have imagined that when the Diamond Ape King hit the wall, after its body disintegrated and dyed half of the mountain wall scarlet red, that such a fantastic scene would unexpectedly appear. What is written on it? Su Luo stared at those words. Even though she knew every brush stroke, but linked together, she completely could not understand its meaning. After Xi Ning died, he was buried here. Ziyin stared at those words and sucked in a deep breath of air. Her voice had a trace of trembling. Xi Ning. Legend has it that he was one of the guardians of the secluded necropolis of the gods. It is said that his grave concealed a map of the secluded necropolis of the gods. Even the calm and collected Ziyin was now speaking with her lips trembling slightly. Map of the secluded necropolis of the gods? Su Luo's heart was slightly startled. However, her face remained unperturbed without a single ripple. She already had 2 pieces of the map of the secluded necropolis of the gods. Could it be that another piece would appear here? Ziyin, with a shaking voice, slowly narrated. The continents have 10 great powers. Through countless years, they have been trying to find the map of the secluded necropolis of the gods. It's a pity that up until now, they hadn't even found a single piece of the map. Su Luo silently turned her face away. Of course they couldn't find it, because she already had a few pieces of the map fragments in her hand. Ziyin again said, Purgatory City openly listed the price, willing to use 10 pieces of purple-colored crystal stones to exchange for a fragment piece of the map to the secluded necropolis of the gods. Unfortunately, several tens of years, there was not a single movement. 10 purple-colored crystal stones for 1 fragment piece of the map to the secluded necropolis of the gods? Having heard what was said, Su Luo was inevitably speechless. So expensive. Unfortunately for Su Manor, at that time, it was easy for her to steal it from them. Chapter 849. Moment Between Life and Death. 5. Didn't expect, at that time. In Su Manor's treasure storage pavilion, in passing, she had grabbed a map that would give her a worth of 10 purple-colored crystal stones. Wasn't the advantage she took too great? However, Su Luo was very curious. Why didn't Su Manor go exchange it for the 10 purple-colored crystal stones? Su Ziyin, holding it, he couldn't even use it. How is it that I have never heard of this exchange for 10 purple-colored crystal stones? Su Luo muttered to herself. Ziyin couldn't help but laugh. This news was spread among the strong experts. How could you have possibly heard of it? So it was like this. Su Luo secretly exclaimed in her heart. So it was because Su Manor's position was too low, they simply hadn't heard of such news. Even Su Ziyin might not have known that it was a fragment of the secluded necropolis of the gods' map. Otherwise, according to Su Ziyin's standards, he would even be endlessly excited over a green-colored crystal stone. How could he possibly not exploit such a good opportunity? Even if he had no use for a purple-colored crystal stone, the 10 purple-colored crystal stones could be exchanged for 10 top-notch experts. Then, Su Manor would have directly sprang up. Fortunately, Su Zian wasn't aware of this path, thus giving her this advantage. After having reasoned it through, Su Luo secretly rejoiced and was pleased with herself. While the two were talking, Elder Luo's body that was like an immortal to the bone unhurriedly landed. Grandfather! Luo Die excitedly threw herself over to him. In her eyes was the desire to cry. Elder Luo merely glanced at her faintly, his brows knotted slightly. I ordered you to properly cultivate. All you know is to play all the time. Now you know to be afraid? Yes, yes, yes. Grandfather is the best. If it weren't for Grandfather appearing just in time, we would have already died here. Luo Die covered her chest, having lingering fear. Elder Luo nodded, his indifferent gaze sweeping by Su Luo and Zi Yin. His eyes didn't have a trace of a ripple, as if looking at two insignificant ants. Just at this moment, the little divine dragon rushed back, like an arrow. He flew towards Su Luo. The little divine dragon's original speed was very quick, but now, he was a lot slower. The first glimpse Su Luo caught of the little divine dragon, she had to do her utmost to restrain from giving voice to laughing in spite of herself. At this moment, the little divine dragon was carrying on his back, slung over his shoulder, holding in his mouth. In any case, any place that could carry things were all weighed down heavily. Heavens! When Luo Die saw the little divine dragon, she let out a burst of alarmed shouts. Isn't this a triangle prism? What kind of bow is that? Also, is that dropping cloth grass? Luo Die's eyes had almost gone cross-eyed from looking. Dropping cloth grass was very similar to her name. She must obtain it. Every one of those things were priceless treasures. How could the little dragon just wantonly carry them back? The little divine dragon, carrying these stuff, and wanted to run into Su Luo's embrace. However, just when he was only 3 meters distance from Su Luo, Luo Haochen's body dodged and blocked in front of the little divine dragon. Stop! Leave behind the treasures. Luo Haochen didn't think the little divine dragon was worthy. He directly extended his hand to lift him by the nape. The little divine dragon's temper was usually docile, as long as you don't piss him off. Able to piss him off, it was often two circumstances. The first was his treasures. The second was his little master. Now, Luo Haochen wanted to block his path and coveted his treasure, and also separated him from his little master. As a result, the little divine dragon was angered. In the course of running, his pair of legs was very strong. One could only see him bounce up and two sharp claws suddenly slice towards Luo Haochen's neck. The little divine dragon's strength was originally already out of the ordinary. In a rage, his strength was even more something that Luo Haochen couldn't be compared to. His pair of sharp claws glittered like frost and snow. Just when it was about to scratch Luo Haochen, the little divine dragon's body floated in the air, motionless. It was as if someone had hit his acupuncture points and stopped him. Chapter 850 Convergence of Experts 1. Domain. A cold light shot forth from Su Luo's eyes. She then unconsciously cast her gaze towards Luo Shengtian. Elder Luo made his move. The corner of Su Luo's mouth raised into an indifferent sneer. What Ziyin said was not wrong. The Luo family was truly famous under the heavens for covering up errors. They would even interfere with the disputes among the younger generation. Su Luo welcomed Elder Luo's gaze. With a cold voice, she said, "Senior, what is your intention?" Elder Luo's eyes swept by Su Luo with a total lack of regard. His eyes had no ripple, nor did it swell. Clearly, he completely did not attach any importance to Su Luo. However, it was true. In the eyes of such an expert at the top, a small fifth rank was truly not significant to look at. Luo Die proudly sneered. "This is our Luo family's stuff, little thief. You dare to steal it? Delusional." A faint anger started to well up in Su Luo's heart. These treasures were found by my family's spirit pet in these mountains. How could it be your Luo family's? Could it be that this entire area of the dark forest belongs to your Luo family? Luo Die relied on their own family's elder being here. In this space between heaven and earth, he held supremacy. As a result, her words didn't even contain a bit of politeness. If it was not for my grandfather lending a hand, how could your spirit pet have found the treasures? If it were not for our spirit pinball, you guys would have died earlier. Then, how would you guys still be standing here? Luo Diei arrogantly cast sidelong glances at the Su Luo pair. Ziyan's expression was unexpected. If it was not for you guys waking up the Diamond Ape King, how could such a situation have occurred? We haven't even sought you guys to calculate this account, yet you are arrogantly resting on your laurels. Hearing what was said, Luo Diei's complexion blushed deep red. After that, she flew into a rage from humiliation and flusteredly pointed at Ziyin. What? Not repaying the favor of being saved and still want to question this kindness? Your purgatory city is truly too arrogant. During the time when the younger generations were quarreling, Elder Luo stood with his hands folded behind his back. His eyes gazed fixedly at that glossy, jade-like wall. His sleeves fluttered about in a posture of an immortal to his bones. Hearing Purgatory City, these two words, from the corner of his eyes, he faintly swept Ziyin a glance. With regards to such a strong expert's point of view, able to even look at the younger generation like this was already rare. Ziyin merely continued to smile coldly. Luo Diei, in the end, who was being the arrogant one? Fine, you continue to be arrogant. Let's see how the injury on your face will be healed. Ziyin knew that Su Luo had the rebirth of flesh pills on her body. A similar kind of antidote refined from primeval pill recipes was always from one family, with no other branch stores. Luo Diei still dared to be so arrogant, then let her face wait till it's destroyed. However, Luo Diei completely did not know that her appearance was already in the control of other people's hand. She continued to be despotic and insufferably arrogant. She sneered a few times. The injury on my face, why should it concern you? Big brother naturally will help me get the rebirth of flesh pills. Even if brother could not get it, then grandfather would help her ask for it. Su Luo smiled coldly and cast her a glance. My senior brother has already vowed to never refine another rebirth of flesh pill. Miss Luo, it would be best if you do not have too much hope for it. Su Luo knew that if she didn't reveal her identity, then the little divine dragon would suffer some grievances. However, the Luo family might merely treat her as a weed and would not believe her. Sure enough, once Su Luo said these words, Luo Haochen only sneered a few times. Luo family belonged to the influential families of apothecaries, so they were well versed in news about refining medicinal recipes. The matter of Long Yin refining the rebirth of flesh pills, the Luo family was already very clear about it. Moreover, they had sent a core disciple in the family's younger generation to negotiate with Long Yin in an attempt to exchange for the primeval pill recipes. But unexpectedly, Long Yin directly refused. He said that he would not exchange it even if you killed him. This made the Luo family's core disciple so mad that he flung his sleeves and directly left. Luo Diei only knew that the rebirth of flesh pills came from Apothecary Long. However, she did not know about Apothecary Long and Su Luo's relationship. Chapter 851 Convergence of Experts 2 Now. Her pair of eyes provocatively sneered, sizing up Su Luo from top to bottom. Tisk, tsk. Apothecary Long is Grandmaster Rong Yun's first disciple, and you call him senior brother? Could it be you think you're that Su Luo, with such good luck as to defy nature? Su Luo spread out both hands, shrugging her shoulders helplessly. Quite unfortunately, that is precisely who I am. Who knew that the moment Su Luo admitted this, it made Luo Diei burst into loud laughter. You're Su Luo? Grandmaster Rong Yun's personal disciple? What kind of joke are you playing at? Luo Diei decided to regard this as unbelievable. Luo Haochen also sneered repeatedly. You think that by pretending to be Grandmaster Rong Yun's disciple, that you won't need to hand over these treasures anymore? How ridiculous. Luo Haochen and Luo Diei thought Su Luo was a fake. However, Ziyin used a complicated gaze to look at Su Luo. Elder Luo predecessor, could it be that even you think these treasures should be taken away by the Luo family? Su Luo serenely gazed at Elder Luo. Her expression was neither servile nor overbearing. She was natural and unrestrained. Although she seemed serene, But how could Elder Luo not hear the question in her words? His eyes swept past, and his gaze fell onto the little divine dragon's body. The thing on the little dragon's body was indeed very useful for Luo family's younger generation. When Elder Luo's line of sight fell on Su Luo's face again, Su Luo suddenly felt her body stiffen. The distinctive might and pressure that only belonged to a strong expert. It was just like an imposing and majestic towering mountain peak, pressing down on Su Luo's shoulders. Luo Shintian. Su Luo's eyes stared slightly, laboriously biting her lower lip. She condensed her entire body's spirit power on her shoulders. Only with this could she breathe somewhat. However, this kind of feeling was really horrible. It reminded Su Luo of that time in Su Manor, when she first saw Li Yaoxiang. At that time, Jade Lake Palace's second master. It was also the first time meeting him, and he gave her an initial show of strength. That time, Nangong appeared in time and saved her from that calamity. But this time, she could only depend on herself. Su Luo's hand that was at her side suddenly clenched tightly. Just when Su Luo felt she was still able to resist the pressure with difficulty, this powerful, mighty pressure once again got stronger in an instant. If it was said that the previous one was at 6th rank and tolerable, now, it had already gotten heavier to the high pressure of a 7th rank. That was like the strength of mountain peaks smashing down heavily, causing Su Luo's knees to bend slightly. This was to make her kneel down, to admit defeat and apologize. Su Luo sneered in her heart. If standing on the side of justice meant having to be forced to apologize, then what she would be throwing away was not just her own pride, but also beautiful teacher's pride. She was pressured until she was shuddering from head to toe, sweat as big as beans rolling down. Su Luo's white as snow skin. At this moment, it was possible to clearly see every vein. Even blood vessels as fine as hair were clearly visible. On Su Luo's fair as jade skin, threads of blood seeped out. It was a ghastly sight to see. Elder Luo only targeted Su Luo alone, so among the several people present, only Su Luo had to endure this kind of unprecedented pressure. Seeing Su Luo being pressured until such a miserable appearance, Ziyan's heart was extremely anxious. If it continued on like this, Su Luo would finally explode. When that time came, how would she explain it? With a cold voice, Ziyan said to Elder Luo, Elder Luo predecessor, if Su Luo's master were to treat Luo Haochen and Luo Die this way, what would you do? PFFDDT, the loathsome girl's master. You actually dare to mention him on equal terms with my grandfather. Ziyin, you must have gone soft in the head? Luo Die disdainfully snorted. Her master can't be mentioned on equal terms with your grandfather? Ha ha ha, fool. Ziyin pointed at these two idiots and snarled, her master is Grandmaster Rong Yun. Chapter 852, Convergence of Experts, 3. Grandmaster Rong Yun, who is world famous, known to everybody and known by everyone. Are you saying Grandmaster Rong Yun can't be mentioned on equal terms as your grandfather? Ha ha ha, later. I'll spread these words out. See how you, the Luo family, will face all the people under the heavens. These words of Ziyan's were said resoundingly and powerfully. It had so much substance that immediately, the Luo family's siblings were intimidated to a stop. While Luo Die was still confused, Luo Haochen had already put out a response. Hee, really too laughable. Su Luo could be Grandmaster Rong Yun's disciple? Then I would be Purgatory City's master's personal disciple. Who doesn't know how to talk big? Having heard what was said, Ziyin almost sneered. You're the Honorable City's master's disciple? Ha ha ha, I am the one that's the Honorable City's master's disciple. Look at this, it's another braggart. First, puffed up Su Luo, then once done boast yourself up? Having heard that, Luo Die covered her belly and burst into loud laughter. Luo Haochen was even more direct. So many words of nonsense. He hated the little divine dragon the most and stepped forward to forcibly take away those treasures on the little divine dragon's body. The little divine dragon was so angry that he kept shouting, Aowu, Aowu. But it was of no avail as his body had been frozen, suspended in the air, unable to move. As a result, The little divine dragon could only use a wrathful gaze that was shooting flames to stare fixedly at Luo Die and Luo Haochen, watching them take away the treasures on his body. The little divine dragon's number one interest was to hunt for treasures. Now, his treasures had been seized. He was so angry that he cried loudly like a baby. Luo Haochen and Luo Die were joyfully satisfied as they took the treasures into their hands. Momentarily, they went wild with joy. Triangle prism, able to break through a robber's ability to hide themselves. Boundless spirit bow, long-distance attacks of unparalleled power. Dropping cloth grass, an essential herb for advancing to the elite apothecary stage. There was still a spirit pinball. Oh heavens! Oh heavens! Oh heavens! How could there be so many treasures? If they bring these back, it would cause a disturbance in the world. This won't do. They must kill Su Luo and Ziyan to silence them. Otherwise, this matter would bring more trouble. Luo Haochen's facial muscles trembled, slightly due to excess excitement. These things were indeed all treasures. Fortunately, Grandpa was here to provide support. Otherwise, they might not be able to bring these back. There was also this mountain peak. Luo Haochen's eyes narrowed slightly. He was convinced that this mountain peak still had many more treasures. Just now, when he was forced to death's door by the Diamond Ape King, he was able to randomly pick up a spirit pinball from beneath his body. A 10th-ranked spirit pinball. Su Luo saw the little divine dragon get so angry that his fists were clenched, his pair of clear eyes shooting off a scarlet color. She couldn't help but feel her own anger rise fully. The Luo family is truly a nest of robbers, actually plundering so openly and without fear. Su Luo's forehead was covered in cold sweat. A cold light flashed across Su Luo's eyes. For a nobleman to take revenge, 10 years was not too late. Daring to steal her things, then the Luo family would have to bear with enlightenment from her revenge. At present, she had not used nothingness of space to wrap around herself. Luo Haochen and Luo Die had less experience, thus with less knowledge, so it's fine. But with Elder Luo's several centuries worth of cultivation and seeing the world, how could he not tell what nothingness of space was? In order to help her conceal her space element, beautiful teacher had spent a lot of mental and physical effort. If she used it for this matter, maybe it would all be exposed. Su Luo's words carried a strong mockery, disdain, and derision. Ordinarily, with Elder Luo's status as a very notable predecessor, he ought to pass on such outside objects and disregard the affairs of life. Even more, he should not take part in the younger generation's arguments, so as to avoid losing the dignity of his identity. But this Elder Luo was unusually narrow-minded and extremely prejudiced, who liked to shield his own family. Humph! Elder Luo snorted heavily. On the hilltop, his sleeve moved with the wind, and the pressure on Su Luo's body suddenly was once again heavier than before. Chapter 853, Convergence of Experts, 4, So Heavy. In a mere split second, Su Luo felt like her whole body was being roasted by a fire. The pressure on her whole body was so heavy that her legs bent. The bones in her whole body made cracking sounds. It was as if in the next moment, her entire body would burst open. Could it be that she would have to admit defeat just like this? Su Luo's whole body was covered in sweat mixed with blood. She gritted her teeth to bear the pain. She clenched her fist tightly. Her heart was extremely unwilling. Just right at this crucial moment, a rumbling noise suddenly came from the sky. The sound shook so much that fear grew in people's hearts. And what was this going to be about? For a moment, everybody's gaze looked towards that horizon that was exploding with sounds. All of a sudden, a navy blue brocade gown suddenly appeared in the sky. Su Luo, with just one glance, was certain. It was an extremely handsome middle-aged man. Merely looking at his appearance, Su Luo kept having a feeling that he was somewhat familiar, as if she had seen him before from somewhere. One could only see him flying fast, hanging in midair. He leisurely and contentedly cast a glance at Luo Shengtian, jeering at him repeatedly. "Oh, old fart, is this you lecturing your family's younger generation?" Before Luo Shengtian could reply, Ziyan rushed first to shout out, Elder Bachin, Su Luo isn't from the Luo family. Originally, rushing to speak before an elder like this was very rude, but the matter was urgent, carrying more weight, so she didn't pay much attention to it. Having heard what was said, Elder Bachin's mocking sneer had an even stronger flavor. Oh, whose family does this lively girl belong to? Ziyin hurriedly pointed at Su Luo and said, she is Grandmaster Rong Yun's newly accepted young disciple. Don't know why Elder Luo couldn't stand the sight of her, and Ziyin knew that the Bachin family usually did not get along with the Luo family. These words of hers were something Elder Bachin really liked to hear. Just as expected, Elder Bachin immediately pointed disdainfully at Elder Luo and burst out in loud laughter. You old fart, those brats in your family are still so disorderly, and you still have the time to discipline Rong Yun's disciple on his behalf? It's truly called nothing to do but eat salty radish while being worried needlessly. One could only see this Elder Bachin merely playing it down as he waved his hand. The strong pressure that had been added onto Su Luo's body suddenly disappeared. Elder Luo's complexion flushed red within a short time. Get lost. Elder Luo rebuked angrily. Truly, just seeing this person vexed him. Tisk, tsk, tsk. Just like this, and you would fly into a rage out of humiliation? I say, your several hundred years of self-restraint, have you thrown it all to the dogs? Elder Bachin revolved around Elder Luo. Elder Luo was itching to throw a slap across. Shut up. If you don't talk, no one will think you're mute. Watching them creating a disturbance while quarreling together, Su Luo felt it was very mystical. Able to quarrel with Elder Luo, one must be in a similar realm of cultivation. Therefore, Su Luo was certain that person who saved her was definitely Bachin Ying's grandfather. It's just that these two people, who could just stomp their feet and destroy an area of super strong experts, were unexpectedly like children, quarreling together like this? Su Luo rubbed her eyes and thought that this was extremely mystical. Ziyin saw that Su Luo was all right, and only then did she release a breath. She leaned close to Su Luo's side and muttered in a low voice, these two elders have been old enemies from when they were young. I heard they've been fighting for several hundred years. Until now, they still haven't distinguished the outcome of their battle. Therefore, every time they meet, if it's not a quarrel, then it's a fight. It's very lively. Hearing what was said, Su Luo nodded secretly in her heart. However, although Elder Bachin sometimes handles things somewhat recklessly, but his conduct is honest and upright. He absolutely would not do things like robbing the younger generation. Ziyan's eyes were glancing about randomly as her voice rose slightly. Su Luo's water caltrop-shaped lips pursed into a shallow smile. This girl really spared no effort on her behalf. Was this considered tattletaling on something shady? However, this friend she made could consider to be worth it. Having a complete mutual understanding with Ziyin, Su Luo also raised her voice slightly. Chapter 854, Convergence of Experts, 5. Who knew? The Luo family. Isn't it just wielding their strength to rob openly and without fear? These super strong experts. Humph. Don't assume just because Elder Bachin was several hundred years old, that his hearing was something that the younger generation absolutely could be compared to. What? Luo Shintian, you old fart. You actually robbed things from the younger generation? Do you still want your pride or not? Having found a point of attack with great difficulty, Elder Bachin almost pointed at Elder Luo's nose to curse him. Elder Luo's face was so submerged in darkness that water nearly dripped out. Panting with rage, he scoffed coldly and turned his back. However, just because Elder Luo remained silent, didn't mean that Elder Bachin had no plans to let him off just like this. You old fart. You really are this shameless, to do this sort of thing? I say, how can you be this shameless? How could you go so low? How can you bring shame upon people of our stature? Huh, I say. You, Elder Bachin, with an angered appearance, chased after Elder Luo and while jumping, pointed at his nose, chewing him out. Bachin Lin, I've tolerated you for a very long time. Elder Luo was also not a paper tiger and furiously shouted loudly. His pair of eyes was staring at Elder Bachin, containing a raging inferno. No matter who got pointed at in the nose and was cursed out like this, all of them would not be happy. Frankly speaking, Elder Beichen's temper and Beichen Ying's were very similar. Both people would similarly flaunt, being shrewd after getting an advantage. Hearing what was said, Elder Beichen immediately rolled up his sleeves. Come, who's scared of who? Who doesn't dare to fight as a puppy? At such an old age, even when their grandson could birth a great-grandson, yet they were still so childish. Elder Luo was at the end of his patience. Very fiercely, he glared at Elder Beichen. Panting with rage, he threw his sleeve and turned his back. To stand abreast with this sort of person was truly pulling down his standing. However, Elder Beichen's sleeve had already been rolled up very high. He jabbed at Elder Luo's chest. Come on, let's fight-o. Elder Luo was itching to slap him, but at present, the timing was off. He was still a person who was very concerned with the general appearance of a situation. Su Luo and Zi Yin were simply struck dumb by this strange scene before their eyes. Su Luo felt that her concept of the world had been completely written anew. Henceforth, another door had been opened for her. So, as it turned out, among super-strong experts, they were not all like her beautiful teacher, who transcended external affairs, living a simple life without strife. There were also some like Elder Beichen who would act shamelessly, like Elder Luo who was narrow-minded that covered up their own greed. Under the blank stares of the younger generations, Elder Beichen still circled around Elder Luo. Unfortunately, the latter was really fed up with him, his complexion extremely unsightly. Come on, let's fight. Whoever doesn't dare to take up this challenge, then that person is the other's damned grandson. Elder Beichen's desire to fight was very strong. Just at this moment, slowly, a cool breeze came through the sky. The horizon was originally a deep blue, almost the color of coastal waters. The deep blue sky seemed as thin as paper. A person easily ripped out a corner of the sky. Just who was this expert? To actually be this powerful? For a moment, everyone raised their heads to look towards the sky. A beautiful man in a Chinese-style gown that was the same color as the sky appeared in midair. One could see that his face was incomparably handsome. His entire person was like a completely pure white jade, faintly discernible like mist. He calmly and serenely stood in midair for a long time. He stood with his hands at his back and an expression so tranquil that it could not be more tranquil. He was so indifferent, as could not be any more indifferent. Having seen the person that arrived, Su Luo's eyes instantly lit up. Master! Su Luo took a step forward, with a smile in her eyes. Before, she still guessed at this. Following the appearance of each and every one of these important people on the scene, presumably, her beautiful teacher would also come over. Just as expected, beautiful teacher really appeared. Chapter 855. An Opportunity in an Unstable Situation. 1. Grandmaster Rong Yun took a glance at Su Luo and nodded his head faintly. However, this shout of Su Luo's shocked all of the Luo family members present. Even Elder Luo swept a glance at Su Luo, not to mention Luo Haochen and Luo Die. Luo Haochen was considerably calm. Luo Die simply opened her eyes wide, staring unwaveringly at Su Luo. It was actually real. This provocative, annoying and loathsome girl was really that Su Luo who had such good luck as to defy nature to snatch away older sister Yao Yao's position. Grandmaster Rong Yun leisurely descended step by step from the sky, walking down slowly. Elder Beichen's originally mischievous and feisty temperament was restrained somewhat after seeing Grandmaster Rong Yun. Grandmaster Rong Yun, long time no see. I trust you have been well since we last met. In accordance with Elder Beichen's temperament, he would most likely have gone up and put his arms around the person's shoulders. However, faced with Grandmaster Rong Yun who was tranquil and calm as a god, he smiled firmly, clearly being very respectful. Compared to the attitude he had towards Elder Luo from before, it was simply as different as night and day. Seeing this, Elder Luo snorted at the tip of his nose and resentfully swept a glance at Elder Beichen. Grandmaster Rong Yun nodded his head towards Elder Beichen Then he walked in front of Su Luo and frowned slightly. Did you complete your assignment? Such a good opportunity to tattletale on their shady behavior. How could Su Luo let it go? One could only see Su Luo nod her head, and then again, weakly shook her head. What's wrong? Grandmaster Rong Yun's eyes narrowed slightly. Master, this disciple indeed found the red acacia seeds. But Su Luo's eyes carried a lot of grief from being wronged. She mumbled as if hiding something and said, But Luo family, you fought with Luo family's younger generation and lost? Grandmaster Rong Yun's eyes burst forth, emitting specks of cold light. The pupils of his eyes were gloomy. They were deep and filled with profound mystery. The fight wasn't with them, it was Elder Luo. Su Luo, feeling aggrieved, said, This disciple can defeat Luo family's younger generation, but after I defeated the younger ones, the older one then, Su Luo's humming and hawing, hesitating appearance, the result was increased by tenfold when compared to saying it directly. When it comes to shielding one's errors and people, how could Grandmaster Rong Yun possibly lose to others? His pair of quiet and waveless eyes apathetically shot towards Luo Shengtian, even though he did not say a word. But that pair of serene eyes carried a stern, cold, and sharp light. It fiercely and ruthlessly alarmed people and made their hearts tremble in fear. Luo Shengtian's heart truly felt that it was suffocating. What was wrong with him, as an elder, taking on the task of lecturing the younger generation? What was the matter with Rong Yun, having a wanting-to-eat-him appearance? Luo Shengtian, my young disciple is stubborn and mischievous, may have many areas that offends. To have troubled you to discipline her. The corner of Grandmaster Rong Yun's mouth hooked into an arc, even though Rong Yun's words were polite, but when Luo Shengtian heard it in his ears, it actually shook his state of mind. He gave a hollow laugh. I didn't waste a lot of thought, just a slight effort of lifting my hand. Indeed, in his heart, he had a guilty conscience. Rong Yun's eyes narrowed slightly with a smile that wasn't a smile. Don't know to how high a level you have cultivated to, and to have these idle feelings, carefully disciplining my disciple in my place. Since it's like this, let's fight. Grandmaster Rong Yun's words, clear and mild, were rather like a burst of wind moving swiftly by. However, every word was branded deeply into Elder Luo's mind. Elder Luo shielded his own, but Grandmaster Rong Yun was even more protective. Moreover, Grandmaster Rong Yun had the qualifications to shield his own. Elder Luo's complexion swelled completely red in a split second. Panting with rage, he glared at Grandmaster Rong Yun. Wasn't it just taking his place to discipline his disciple? Why be so fierce? PFFTTD, Elder Beichen, absolutely unrestrained, started to laugh heartily. Elder Luo's complexion became even more ugly. Elder Beichen laughed heartily as he pointed at Elder Luo. You, I say you, if you want to bully someone, you should pick a pushover to pinch. Bullying whoever isn't good enough. But you actually bullied Grandmaster Rong Yun's disciple. You must be tired of living. Chapter 856, An Opportunity in an Unstable Situation. 2. Shut up. Elder Luo glared very fiercely at Elder Beichen. Even if I shut up, it's useless. Him being a master is now investigating what you were responsible for. How do you see it? Elder Beichen was berated, but was still smiling happily. This elder's temperament was the same as Beichen Ying's, a happy-go-lucky kind of person. Elder Luo looked towards Rong Yun and saw his apathetic gaze filled with a menacing, murderous aura. His heart trembled with fear. Then he lifted his eyes to signal to Luo Haochen. Luo Haochen saw his own grandfather being taunted, and a gush of fury appeared in his heart, his expression becoming severely cold. But his grandfather's order, he dared not disobey. So he unwillingly threw those several treasures towards Su Luo. It seemed to him that Su Luo would definitely reach out her hand to catch them. But Su Luo did not cooperate with him. She was pretending to talk with Ziyan. Consequently, one could only hear the 3 bang sounds, and everything fell to the ground. Oh, my treasures, Su Luo cried out in surprise, raised her eyes and glared at Luo Haochen. Luo Haochen, what do you mean by this? Luo Haochen had a very annoyed expression. Already returned your things, and still so troublesome. In the end, do you want it or not? Now, if she wanted him to go pick it up and then return it to her, this was absolutely impossible. Therefore, Luo Haochen cast cold, sidelong glances at Su Luo and turned his body away. Rong Yun's eyes narrowed dangerously, but one also didn't see how he moved. One could only see his sleeve flip over. And in the next second, Luo Haochen had already been lifted into his hands. It was similar to lifting a chick up. He was hung upside down, carried up by Rong Yun. This unforeseen event immediately shocked everyone. Rong Yun, what are you doing? Luo Shengtian had never thought that Rong Yun, with that sort of good disposition, would actually become so hostile so quickly. Rong Yun leisurely cast a glance at him and indifferently said a sentence. I'm disciplining your disciple and grandson in your place. Didn't even know what Rong Yun did. His disposition could still be considered as good, but Luo Haochen unexpectedly gave blood-curdling screams. Luo Shengtian's complexion tensed and he berated. Quickly release him. Rong Yun laughed faintly and played it down. Release him, then I'll release. There's nothing difficult about this. In passing, he threw Luo Haochen towards Luo Shengtian. Afraid of Rong Yun doing something else, Luo Shengtian caught Luo Haochen steadily in his hands, but he himself had to take 10 steps backwards. Every step left a deep footprint in the ground. Grandmaster Rong Yun's things weren't easy to catch. Only with great difficulty did Luo Shengtian get rid of that enormous powerful pressure in order to stabilize him and Luo Haochen. It was also at this moment that Luo Shengtian suddenly discovered that the gap in strength between himself and Grandmaster Rong Yun was actually so huge. However, Luo Haochen, at this moment, had an in-poor health expression, and his body was dispirited. Grandpa, Grandpa, it really hurts. Am I going to die? Although Rong Yun had just pinched him in passing, but he had actually abolished a whole level of Luo Haochen's cultivation. From the summit of the 7th rank, he had returned to the beginning of 6th rank. This was already more than 1 rank. Rong Yun you. Luo Shengtian got so angry that even his beard was sticking up. Hateful, simply too hateful. He actually abolished his precious grandson's cultivation in front of him. In front of his face, he had abolished his grandson's cultivation. Luo Shengtian did not only feel regret for his grandson's cultivation, at the same time, this was Rong Yun thrashing his pride. Luo Shengtian was itching to rush up and wage 300 rounds of battle with Rong Yun. But what Grandmaster Rong Yun had displayed just now was only the tip of the iceberg of his strength. Yet, it had already scared him unbearably. He was absolutely not Grandmaster Rong Yun's opponent. Rong Yun cast an apathetically sidelong glance at him, returning politeness for politeness. No need to be thankful. Luo Shengtian was immediately choked off. Chapter 857. An Opportunity in an Unstable Situation. 3. Aren't you afraid that I might also cripple your disciple's cultivation? Luo Shengtian was extremely angry, but still smiled. However, in fact, his heart was hollow. Rong Yun smiled indifferently. You can do that, only if you hide the entire Luo family. Otherwise, the words he didn't finish speaking was meaningful. Otherwise, the entire Luo family would be buried with Su Luo. Curses. Luo Shengtian's complexion was ashen from fury, and his fist was tightly clenched. If he could win against Rong Yun, then fine. However, he simply could not do so. Also, he had reasons to believe that Grandmaster Rong Yun would truly do this. His words were not just hot air. Rong Yun's face was cold as he indifferently looked at him. In the future, just manage your Luo family better. My disciple can only be managed by me. Bullying intolerably. Luo Shengtian clenched his fists tightly. I will allow you to challenge me once. Rong Yun flung his sleeves with an indifferent expression. Hearing what was said, Luo Shengtian's throat closed. If he could beat Rong Yun, why would he waste so many words? Luo Shengtian, panting with rage, looked away. People that accomplished great things did not bother with trifles. He would bear it. Grandfather, Luo Haochen, who was supported by Luo Die, weakly yelled. Luo Haochen expressed his dissatisfaction. How was it that this time, grandfather was this weak? Unexpectedly, he did not help him take revenge. Could it be that he would simply lose a level of his cultivation like this in vain? Luo Shengtian unhappily sent him a glare. He never thought that Rong Yun would have a complete fallout with him over a loathsome girl. Also, his methods would be this ruthless and absolute. Now, Luo Haochen could only swallow this grievance. Otherwise, what else could be done? He couldn't win in a fight, then curse him? You dare to curse, he could continue to cripple your cultivation. What could be done? In truth, Elder Bachin was also astonished by Rong Yun's methods. From his impression, this Grandmaster-ranked apothecary was always gentle and indifferent, standing completely aloof of worldly matters. He had not imagined that when he made a move, he would truly kill so decisively. Thinking up till this point, Bachin Lin looked at Su Luo curiously. This little girl was truly not that simple. His own grandson usually did not put any attention to women. However, he would often write back home and always mention this extremely lucky little girl. Bachin Lin was experienced in the ways of the world. How could he not understand his own grandson's thoughts? He looked at Su Luo and rubbed his chin in deep thought. This girl was truly not bad. Don't know if he could snatch her away and raise her as his grandson's wife. At this moment, the situation became a deadlock. There were no benefits to anyone. As a result, they could only let Bachin Lin come out to smooth things over. Luo Shintian, what are you so angry about? Their healthy young miss was almost pressured to the point of having her flesh lacerated. Destroying the cultivation of your grandchild by a level is still considered light. If you had injured my family's little shadow, see how this granddaddy will waste your grandchild. Although Bachin Lin smoothed things over, he was still very partial towards the other side. My grandfather did not know she was Grandmaster Rong Yun's disciple. Luo Jie had a dissatisfied expression. Ziyin coldly snorted. Bullshit. A while ago, Su Luo had revealed her identity. It was you guys who did not believe her? Who are you blaming? Luo Jie choked and very fiercely glared at Ziyin. Would Ziyin die if she didn't oppose her? Would she really die? Bachin Lin patted Luo Shengtian's shoulders. I say, you old fart, you truly did not know that she was Rong Yun's disciple? Humph. Luo Shengtian looked away. Luo Haochen and Luo Die might not have believed, however, he believed it. Only, Rong Yun would rather receive this girl instead of the Luo family's younger generation. His heart was unsatisfied, thus, he intentionally pressured her. Who could have thought that Rong Yun actually came? Moreover, he would immediately become hostile. This point was completely outside of Luo Shengtian's expectations. Chapter 858, An Opportunity in an Unstable Situation. 4. Just seeing Luo Shengtian's response made Bachin Lin's heart bright and smooth as a mirror. Then isn't it all set? Who told you to first bully other people's precious disciple? So to say, the one in the wrong was you old fart. Bachin Lin concluded after the coffin had been sealed. Su Luo secretly smiled in her heart. The nature of this elder from Bachin family was straightforward, outspoken, and did not bother about trifles. He had the same go-between temperament as Bachin Ing. Not to mention that just now, it was he who had moved to save her. As a result, Su Luo's first impression of Elder Bachin was pretty good. Luo Shangtian was extremely angry, yet he could only look on helplessly. He gave a snort, flung his sleeves, and then turned his head away. He gazed towards that glossy, jade-like wall. Now that is more correct. The most important thing is to unseal this jade wall and enter this fierce-looking tomb. Elder Bachin said, with hands clasped behind his back. His gaze was luminous and shiny. We are still short one person. Rong Yun's indifferent gaze swept past. At this moment, the three super-powerful experts had all of their attention focused on that jade wall. The dispute from a moment ago was imperceptibly dispelled. Li Xiaofeng's nose is sharper than a dog. Could it be that this time, he is in seclusion to cultivate and didn't feel it? Elder Bachin rubbed his nose and muttered to himself. Just at this moment, the sky suddenly echoed with a rumbling sound. Su Luo raised her eyes up to look. It was another person's figure slowly descending. Today could be described as an opportunity in an unstable situation. It was the gathering of experts from all directions. Li Xiaofeng, I was just saying it was impossible for your dog-like nose not to sense this fishy smell, and here you have arrived, right? Elder Bachin laughed out loud. Even a crazy old man like you had arrived. How could I not come? Li Xiaofeng nimbly descended and returned mockingly. Amongst these 4 strong experts, Grandmaster Rong Yun was the most senior. The other 3 all seemed to be Grandmaster Rong Yun's subordinates. In front of these famous experts, those few younger generations' existence seemed extremely weak. At this moment, a touch of suspicion flashed through Su Luo's. Li Xiaofeng? His last name was Li, and also on equal terms with beautiful teacher. Could this person be that person from the Jade Lakesley family? Bachin Lin smiled sarcastically. My Bachin Palace is indifferent, but do you also dare to step out of the Jade Lake Palace? Li Xiaofeng returned with a ridiculing sentence. Who told the Bachin Palace not to have any noteworthy treasures in it? Elder Bachin's complexion condensed and snorted twice as he placed his hands behind him. Then your Jade Lakesley family must guard them well. Don't try to steal a chicken only to lose the rice used to lure it. Brother Bachin is overthinking. The Bachin Palace was never taken notice of by others. So, many things are not known to you. This is also only natural. Li Xiaofeng's oral ability was very good. Every word was like a pearl. Every sentence was sarcastic, directly forcing Elder Bachin's complexion to condense into frost. Rong Yun indifferently swept him a glance. This matter should not be delayed. Studying the inscriptions is the most important matter. Once those words were said, the other 3 exceptional experts' minds shivered. Soon after, all of their gazes were fixed on that bright and clean, jade-like stone wall. They had surrounded the jade wall and concentrated fully on studying the inscriptions on it. The densely packed inscriptions flashed with divine light. Bachin Lin took the lead and moved, sending out an attack. However, that huge energy immediately rolled on like smoke and started to jolt towards the front. PFFF Luo Haochen, who had been weakened, was jolted until he directly vomited out a mouthful of blood violently. In fact, that huge energy had shot straight towards Luo Die. Only, she unconsciously dropped down to the ground and did not pull Luo Haochen down. As a result, that huge energy, with incomparable accuracy, shot into Luo Haochen's body and injured him severely. Luo Haochen's body was already very weak, and in addition to receiving this attack, his entire body had become so weak to the point of dying. Seeing this, Luo Shangtian immediately took out a cure-all spirit pill and stuffed it into Luo Haochen's mouth. Chapter 859. An opportunity in an unstable situation. 5. Soon after, his heavy eyebrows scrunched up. You crazy old man did it on purpose. Out of all the younger generation present, only Luo Haochen was wounded. The other 3 had all dodged it. Bachin Lin spread out both hands, with innocence written all over his face. Who knew that the rock wall would bounce it back? It's not like you said it beforehand. Luo Shengtian was so enraged that he directly smashed a fist over. He saw that Luo Haochen wasn't mortally wounded, so his complexion looked slightly better now. You guys leave this place at once. Li Xiaofeng's glance skimmed through the younger generation with a remote coldness. Especially when he saw Su Luo, his eyes turned even more conspicuously malicious. Li Xiaofeng, although his name had the Xiao word that meant smile, but his conduct was extremely treacherous, sinister, and gloomily introverted. Su Luo silently retracted her gaze. With great masters present, the few of them in the younger generation could never pick up any advantages, especially when Elder Bachin's palm strike that was slapped over had such a strong recoil. If they stayed there any longer, the consequences would be too horrible to contemplate. Therefore, Su Luo and Zi Yin exchanged a glance. Both of them nodded their heads and left, hand in hand. Luo Die, harboring a guilty conscience, supported Luo Haochen. Both of them also left together. Su Luo, who turned her body around to walk forward, suddenly felt a murderous presence behind her. It was as if a scorching hot glare was fixed on her back. That glare was strong and aggressive with a murderous intent that was breathtaking. It made her heart feel very uneasy. Su Luo clenched her hands tightly that was at her side and slowly turned around. Once she turned her eyes around, it met with Li Xiaofeng's malicious and grim pair of eyes. That pair of eyes was distant and heavy, filled with viciousness and venom. Although she turned back around quickly, but Li Xiaofeng's strange pair of eyes made Su Luo feel uneasy. Ziyin noticed Su Luo's difference, and she asked, deeply concerned, "What's wrong?" Like Li Xiaofeng's grade of exceptional expert, Ziyin also had no way to deal with them. Su Luo, not wanting to increase her burden, laughed. "It's nothing, only somewhat curious. Don't know if Master and them can open C.I. Ning's grave. Even if they can open it, so what? Humph, not a single elder of Purgatory City is present." Luo Die, supporting Luo Haochen, sneered coldly. Ziyin swiped a despising gaze at her. "Using your own elder brother as a shield in critical moments, you vicious girl. You don't have the qualifications to talk to this Miss Scram." Ziyin was obviously driving a wedge between them. The matter before was all too coincidental. Although Luo Die had dodged it, but Luo Haochen wasn't so lucky and ran into it. And even if the consequences created was the same, you couldn't say that it was because Luo Die gave a push. At this time, Luo Die was both ashamed and angry. She glared at Ziyin very fiercely. Only then did she softly, in a humble voice, apologize to Luo Haochen. "Older brother." Luo Haochen looked at her with ice-cold eyes. You had to say, Ziyin's words possessed a very strong destructive power. Luo Haochen remembered that when they were all chased by the murderous Diamond Ape King before, under such a dangerous, tense situation, he, from the start to finish, had protected his younger sister, but she? Luo Haochen was always good to his younger sister, but this time, to say that he was not a bit disappointed would be a lie. "Older brother, I really didn't do it on purpose." Luo Jie could clearly see the cold meaning in Luo Haochen's eyes. Her heart was somewhat frantic. "You didn't do it on purpose, then that means you did it intentionally." In her previous life, Ziyin probably was Luo Jie's nemesis. "Older brother, you must believe me, at that time, I was anxious and instinctively dodged." Luo Jie continued to persist in explaining. "Since it was due to instinct, then it just illustrates it even more that deep in your heart, your brother is merely a shield to you," Ziyin said while grinning. Yu Luo Jie was pushed back, sentence after sentence. Moreover, every single sentence Ziyin said was exceptionally sharp, stabbing her words until they drew blood, while naked. Chapter 860, A Glimmer of Hope, 1. Am I wrong? Didn't I just dissect out the hidden meanings in your words? Could it be that, in your impression, your brother would be this stupid? That he couldn't spot such a clumsy lie? You. Luo Die clenched her fists, face flushed red from anger. Just at this time, Su Luo suddenly pulled Ziyin away, shouting, "Careful!" Su Luo subconsciously dragged Ziyin down to the ground. At the same time, nothingness of space momentarily enveloped them both. An incomparably formidable wave of terrifying power spread from the jade-like wall. For a moment, the whole world exploded with loud crashing sounds that shocked the heavens. Crash! The whole mountain range shook and rocked violently. The heavens rumbled as if there were continuous claps of thunder. Su Luo and the others were currently in the valley. Twice, it was the mountain peak. Now both sides of the mountain peak exploded and burst out, and a countless number of huge rocks fell down from the peak. The momentum was so turbulent like a surging sea, with huge waves soaring to the sky. Wherever one went, the heaven and earth would change color, with vegetation turning into ashes. Under the scattered rocks, even the great masters at the top were also in danger of dying. "Go!" Su Luo grabbed Ziyin and, with extreme quickness, dashed forward. Both were enveloped in nothingness of space and were also extremely fast. Therefore, they only received minor injuries. Compared to the two people's calmness, The Luo family siblings were in a much more difficult situation. Luo Haochen's injuries were really the worst kind of timing. The instinct to survive made his speed very fast, but how could it be compared to Su Luo and Ziyan's? The pair of siblings continuously suffered hits from the countless number of boulders. Momentarily, they were simply so weary and couldn't dealt with it anymore. Oh, a huge rock smashed towards Luo Die's back. The Luo family siblings, with one on the left and the other on the right, were supporting each other. However, this rock came too quickly, too urgently, too violently. Luo Die was basically unable to block it. Luo Die couldn't avoid it. Unconsciously, she turned and ran to Luo Haochen's side. She was already used to having her older brother's protection. Bam! That huge piece of rock smashed towards Luo Haochen, burying his lower half in a flash. A violent cry of pain left Luo Haochen's mouth. The lower half of his body was crushed under the huge rock, causing him so much pain that his entire body felt numb. After his pained cries, he fiercely glared at Luo Die. This was the second time Luo Die. Luo Haochen bit down on his back teeth, stressing each word, so regretful that he almost spit out blood. He was so trusting in giving his other side to Luo Die, but she, time and time again, betrayed him. Older brother, I didn't do it on purpose. Indeed, Luo Die really didn't do it on purpose. It was all subconsciously done. Seeing Luo Haochen's gaze that was about to eat someone, Luo Die felt scared and also horrible. Boo-hoo, older brother. I really didn't do it on purpose, Luo Die. You really are bitterly disappointing. I really regret always saving you along the way. Luo Haochen clenched his teeth, so furious that the veins in his forehead popped out. If it wasn't for Luo Die, then Luo Haochen would never have ended up in such a dangerous situation. Luo Die could only bow her head, not daring to annoy Luo Haochen any further. I order you to get lost. Roll away as far away as you can. Luo Haochen really did not want to see Luo Die's pathetic, being wronged face. Older brother, Luo Die, with weepy eyes that wanted to sob, looked at the extremely furious Luo Haochen. She originally wanted to beg for forgiveness, but seeing those waves of huge rocks surging towards Luo Haochen, she immediately changed what she wanted to say. Older brother, I will find people to save you. You wait here. Luo Die had hardly finished her sentence when her figure ran so far that it vanished. Chapter 861, A Glimmer of Hope. 2 Now, Luo Haochen didn't have the strength to protect her. If she stayed, it would be Luo Die protecting Luo Haochen. Luo Die couldn't even protect herself now. How could she handle the burden of protecting Luo Haochen? Go die. Luo Haochen clenched his fists tightly. Now, several more huge boulders suddenly smashed towards Luo Haochen. The pitiful Luo Haochen, like this, was pressed underneath those pieces of boulders. Fortunately, there were gaps between the boulders and didn't completely pin him under. That would have destroyed him. However, because his legs were pinned under the rocks, he absolutely had no way of escaping. He could only take deep breaths, with cold sweat flowing out continuously due to pain. Luo Die hadn't run too far before she realized that she had landed in a huge predicament. Front, back, left and right. Except for her alone, there wasn't another human figure. Su Luo and Zi Yin had already run far away earlier, such that not even a shadow was visible anymore. Nervous, worried, afraid, anxious, for a moment, they all rushed into her mind. No, she didn't want to die. She was so beautiful, so lovely, so young. She still hadn't lived enough of the beautiful life. How could she be willing to die? What to do? What to do? Luo Die was so anxious that she ran around in circles. Crashed, a torrent of huge rocks and mud rushed down from the two peaks, swirling up like a smoke signal for danger. A countless number of magical beasts rushed out in large groups. Bang! A group of 6th-ranked flaming rhinoceroses approached her from the distance, sprinting until they arrived. Wherever they went, yellow sand would swirl up, the neat sound of the flaming rhinoceros's footsteps seemed as if the whole world had fallen. Seeing this herd of violently charging flaming rhinoceroses approaching nearer from a distance, Luo Die's face suddenly changed dramatically. Because of the mud and rock slide, the valley was already very narrow. She simply could not avoid them. What to do? Luo Die was entirely out of ideas. Her only way out was to use all her strength to run forward. Run faster than the flaming rhinoceroses. Only like this could she avoid losing her life under the hooves of those monstrous flaming rhinoceroses. Run, run, run. Luo Die was in such a hurry that she didn't even have time to wipe away her sweat. She exerted all of her strength, and she could indeed maintain a certain distance between herself and the flaming rhinoceroses. However, she didn't have any more spirit restoration pills on her. On top of that, people only had 2 legs. How could one outrun the flaming rhinoceroses running on all 4s? So, in the end, Luo Die was eventually overtaken. The large herd of flaming rhinoceroses exploded past, giving off boisterous rumbling sounds of iron hooves hitting the ground. Luo Die was jostled around in the herd of flaming rhinoceroses and was dizzy from all the collisions. Luo Die clenched her fists and forced herself not to fall down, because in this situation, the only outcome of falling down on the ground was to be trampled to death by iron hooves. However, Luo Die could only pay attention to her legs, but could not take care of her upper part. Each and every one of the flaming rhinoceroses was fleeing with all their strength. Unfortunately, a human insisted on staggering along here, blocking their line of sight. Therefore, several flaming rhinoceroses, who couldn't put up with it any longer, heavily pierced Luo Die with their horns. No, save me, being pierced and raised high. Luo Die was scared until her face turned pale. She started to screech in a loud voice. The flaming rhinoceroses originally wanted to toss her far away, but the nervous Luo Die strained herself to turn and tightly held onto the flaming rhinoceros's nose. Awoo! The flaming rhinoceros was enraged half to death. It took a deep breath, then followed directly by blowing a mouthful of flames towards Luo Die's body. The raging blaze immediately ignited the clothes on Luo Die's body. Luo Die's hand released, and she suddenly fell down towards the ground. For a moment, a countless number of flaming rhinoceroses were prepared to trample over her body to pass with rumbling sounds. But, in this situation between life and death, Luo Die's mind suddenly flashed with a bright idea. Chapter 862, A Glimmer of Hope, 3. The vine in her sleeve suddenly grew longer and launched towards one of the flaming rhinoceroses. Then it immediately pulled. At the last second before Luo Die was about to be trampled on, the green vine suddenly tightened. In the next glance, she had already climbed on the flaming rhinoceros's back. The heavens do not want me to die. Luo Die was excited as she looked up to the sky and laughed heartily. Yet, when she was laughing, an enormous rock flew right towards her head. Before Luo Die could finish laughing, her body swayed around, and just like Luo Haochen, she was pinned under huge boulders. But this time, there were numerous flaming rhinoceroses that accompanied her. Speaking of Su Luo and Zi Yin, their speed could be described as lightning fast, comparable to the deities. Very quickly, they escaped the area of collapsing mountains and landslides. Phew, I'm tired to death. They stopped at a safe place. Ziyin leaned on a rock and breathed deeply. She turned her head to look back. Clearly, her expression had improved. Luo Haochen and Luo Die, those 2 disgusting people, couldn't have been buried by the rocks, right? Su Luo laughed. If these 2 siblings trusted each other and collaborated, then there is a possibility they could have ran out. Otherwise, it would be hard to say. Ziyin pointed to the sky and shouted, "Quickly look!" Su Luo lifted her eyes to look. At this moment, a black cloud hid the sky and covered the earth, covering their heads. But, where the mountains collapsed, a divine light suddenly rushed into the sky. "Si Ai Ning? No way!" Ziyan's eyes widened in shock, with her eyeballs nearly popping out. "Si Ning?" Su Luo asked uncertainly. Ziyan's eyes were unblinkingly fixed on the horizon, but she said it to Su Luo. "Look, it's definitely Si Ning. He didn't die after all." Si Ning didn't die? How could that have happened? Legend has it that Si Ning was one of the guardians of the secluded necropolis of the gods. Catching him would be so much more useful than a map. Any top experts would never give up this opportunity. As expected, swish, swish, several silhouettes, with lightning speed, chased towards Si Ning. In a flash, they disappeared into the horizon, only leaving behind several afterimages. Su Luo suddenly had a bright idea. Right now, all of the top experts have left. Doesn't that mean there is nobody guarding that cliff? When Su Luo murmured this out, Ziyin was also dumbfounded. She immediately slapped her thigh in excitement. That's right. The several strong experts have all chased after Si Ning. Isn't the cliff left for us to hunt for treasures? Heavens! Moreover, after the several strong experts had left, the cliff was also no longer dangerous. Opportunity knocks but once. Without waiting for Su Luo's instructions, the little divine dragon turned around and ran towards the cliff. Just a moment ago, he had found many treasures in there. In fact, there were still more, only that he couldn't carry them. Let's go. We'll immediately walk the same way back. Su Luo grabbed Ziyin and ran back using the path they came from. Su Luo and Ziyin understood each other really well, with excellent cooperation. In the wake of the seal being opened, the earthquake had almost calmed down, aside from several still collapsing mountain peaks. Hey, never thought it could happen like this. This time, we're going to be rich. Ziyin rubbed her hands together very excitedly. However, when the two were running back, they were still shocked by the view in front of them. What was originally a quiet canyon was now razed to the ground in front of their eyes. Countless broken rocks, numerous corpses of magical beasts lying on the ground, rivers of blood. Let's go. Ziyin pulled at Su Luo. Su Luo nodded her head and followed after her. The road that leads to success was always built upon piles of bones from the dead. These are all normal. Ziyin was afraid that Su Luo would have a psychological shadow that remained, so she carefully explained it to her. Chapter 863, A Glimmer of Hope. 4. Arriving at their destination, sure enough, the figures of the four strong experts were nowhere to be seen. The entire ground was a complete mess, shattered into small pieces. Now, the cliff had already been opened. It was pitch black inside, like in a horror movie. Su Luo and Ziyin stood at the entrance to the cave with grave expressions. Because if they went in directly, maybe there would be danger. However, the little divine dragon's speed was very fast. With a swoosh sound, the little divine dragon became a ray of light, dashing straight in. Afraid of what might happen to the little divine dragon, consequently, Su Luo and Ziyin looked at each other. Afterwards, they both followed into the cave. After entering the rock wall, it was pitch black as ink. In it was a tunnel so dark that they couldn't see their own hands. They kept on walking, unaware of how long they had walked. Who could have known that there was a completely different world behind this rock wall? All of a sudden, the little divine dragon stopped in his tracks and sniffed around using his sensitive nose. Is there danger? Su Luo halted her footsteps, slanting her head to ask the little divine dragon who was standing on her shoulder. The little divine dragon scratched his head, nodded, and then shook his head again. It was a very strange smell. Weird smell? Su Luo told Ziyin what the little divine dragon had said. Coming to a treasure mountain and returning empty-handed. This is not something that fits my character. I'll definitely keep going. Su Luo, how about you? An unwavering determination flashed through Ziyin's eyes. It's rare for the four great experts to open the door for us. If we don't enter, it would be too great a waste. Su Luo smilingly nodded her head. The road before them was even darker. Even though Su Luo could see in the dark at this time, she also couldn't see anything. However, this wasn't a difficult problem for Su Luo at all. A fireball lit up at her fingertips, and the situation around them was all visible. This was a dark corridor where no end could be seen. This corridor was even narrower than the one before. This corridor was long and narrow, only barely wide enough for two people to walk side by side. Moreover, the air was also increasingly thinner here as well. The two of them cautiously and guardedly walked in this corridor for ages. They had nearly reached the halfway point in the middle of the mountain. "We're here." The end of this corridor was in front of them. Soon, a wide, bright hall opened up before them. The hall was close to 100 square meters, but it went for as far as the eyes could see. Inside was completely empty, with nothing in it. How can it be like this? Ziyin paced around in astonishment. Such a hidden place originally. She thought there would at least be some treasures. But who would have known here? Except for a few pieces of broken stones piled up, there was nothing else. Su Luo's eyebrows wrinkled slightly, and she rubbed her chin. She silently walked around the hall. While walking, she was also inspecting it. Since the little divine dragon entered without looking back, then this was enough to prove that there were treasures here. Merely, they still hadn't found them yet. Alas, I thought we could pick up what the older generation didn't want. As it turns out, there's nothing here. Ziyin shrugged her shoulders helplessly. This trip turned out to be a waste. As she was speaking, Ziyin dispiritedly sat down on a piece of stone. Su Luo searched around and couldn't find anything, and she also felt somewhat disappointed. They came here with such high hopes, and the result was to return in disappointment. Su Luo looked towards the little divine dragon. At this time, if there really was a treasure, then they'll need to depend on the little divine dragon. Oh. But at this moment, the little divine dragon was spinning around on the ground. To say it more accurately, he was playing chasing his own tail. As a result, he spinned around in circle after another circle. But no matter what, he couldn't catch his own tail. Ziyin sighed deeply. Such a small place. We had searched it all. There's really nothing. Oh. Chapter 864, A Glimmer of Hope. 5. Su Luo saw that the little divine dragon was also at wit's end. Her brows knitted. Just wait a minute. I keep feeling then. Right at this moment, the little divine dragon's expression suddenly changed. The little divine dragon suddenly threw himself at Ziyin. Ziyin was immediately overwhelmed somewhat by such favor. This little guy had always been cold and indifferent towards her. At present, it was a rare thing for him to voluntarily enter into her lap. Ziyin's mood immediately became very good. Come over to Big Sister's side. Before she finished speaking, the little divine dragon had brushed past her. His finger was pointing straight at the target. That stone Ziyin was sitting on really doesn't give one face-off. Ziyin poked at the little divine dragon's head and also rubbed her own head. However, compared to Ziyin, Su Luo had a much better understanding of the little divine dragon's temperament. Able to make the little divine dragon's pair of eyes shine brightly like that, he had definitely seen a treasure. At this moment, the little divine dragon had just extended his two sharp claws. He was scratching at the stone beneath Ziyin. Immediately, stone fragments swirled in the air, filling the whole sky. Ziyin hurriedly jumped up, because if she hadn't jumped up, the little divine dragon might have also scratched apart her butt. Seeing the little divine dragon so excited, a bright light immediately flashed through Su Luo's eyes. Could it be that the treasure was hidden inside these ordinary stones? Su Luo carefully looked at that stone. All of a sudden, she let out an "oh" sound of surprise. Her eyes suddenly lit up. Oh, just a moment ago, she really was almost fooled. These stones had an outward appearance that made them seem like ordinary stones. However, in fact, these stones had great origins. Ziyin, quickly come and see. Su Luo pulled Ziyin up with one hand and pointed at that stone. What are you doing? What's so good about this stone? I say, is it because your family's little divine dragon has nothing better to do? To unexpectedly run over to shave a stone? Ziyin had an expression full of doubt. She simply didn't know that the little divine dragon had a special treasure hunting ability. Therefore, she was very puzzled by his behavior. Your luck truly isn't bad. The moment you sat down, you sat on a treasure, Su Luo said in annoyance. Ziyin was really. Even the little divine dragon was helping her dig out the treasure. Unexpectedly, she still didn't know. Could this be the legendary of Fool's Luck? Treasure? Where? Ziyin had an expression full of disbelief. Su Luo's gaze was looking at that stone. It seemed as if Ziyin was choking. She pointed at that stone. You're saying this one? Su Luo nodded her head in a deadly earnest manner. Ziyin, with a pff sound, laughed out loud. Too funny. How could a treasure be inside this stone? I really don't believe it. Su Luo was all smiles as she responded. Since you don't believe it, then if a treasure really emerges from inside, then you must gift it to me. Ziyin slapped her chest, vouching for it. Sure, if a treasure really emerges from inside, I won't raise any objections. And immediately, Ziyin saw that curve hooking up in the corner of Su Luo's mouth and those eyes still containing a smile as before. In a split second, she quivered. Not right. Su Luo was as cunning as a little fox. Maybe something would really come from inside. She must not be deceived by Su Luo, this cunning little fox. Consequently, with the words at the tip of her tongue, Ziyin forcibly changed it. If a treasure really emerges from inside, I, without demur, will keep it for myself. Su Luo let out a pfft sound of laughter. You miser. At least you turned around quickly. Otherwise, you certainly wouldn't have a share in this treasure. Do you know what this stone is? What? Wasn't it just a shining white stone? Not much different from those stones in the surrounding mountains. It was basically exactly the same. We have been deceived by the external appearance of this stone. I tell you, in fact, this stone's external appearance only looks like a stone. Chapter 865, A Glimmer of Hope, 6. In fact, this is actually a crystal stone source stone. Su Luo shook her head slowly, her expression carrying a trace of astonishment. If it weren't for the zealousness the little divine dragon displayed before this, I really hadn't taken notice of it. A crystal stone source stone? Ziyin, having heard what was said, was startled. Afterwards, she carefully sized up that stone. I've seen a crystal stone source stone before, but this doesn't look like it. So that's to say, this is an even higher grade, sealed source stone. There was a trace of graveness in Su Luo's expression. Reportedly, what's sealed inside isn't a crystal stone, but something else. Ziyin found it hard to believe. She hadn't even heard of something like it before. Therefore, let's take a look in the end. What would appear from inside of it? Su Luo stooped to crouch down in front of that sealed stone that was over 50 kilograms in weight. Su Luo raised her head and was all smiles as she looked at Ziyin, waving her palm. This hand of mine is the famous little black hand. Are you certain you want me to break it open? At that time, when a hideous messy thing comes out, you better not blame me. Little black hand, one? Isn't this hand of yours the famous little red hand, too? Ziyin firmly did not believe it. Who did you hear that from? To ask unintentionally versus to ask with intent. A trace of unnaturalness flashed across Ziyin's complexion. She compelled herself to act normal. If your luck was bad, how could you have paid your respects under Grandmaster Rongyun's door? Hearing that, Su Luo thought for a bit, and also felt that this was right. That matter of her becoming a formal disciple was all carried out in public. The twists and turns of the road with many crooks and bends. In the end, she really did manage to pay her respects to him. This matter had been spread extremely wide. It wasn't difficult for Ziyin to also know it. Then all right, I open it, then I'll open it. An excited radiance flashed across Su Luo's eyes. She had never opened a sealed source stone before. Su Luo took out that Yanhua dagger and took the sealed source stone's measure in front of it. Ziyin nervously crouched on the other side and unblinkingly watched the sealed stone, afraid to miss a little bit of news. After Su Luo finished taking its measure to find a position, holding her breath with rapt attention, she raised her hand and brought the blade down. Swish, the dagger directly cut down. A piece of shining white stone fell to the floor. Nothing, Ziyin said in disappointment. Su Luo's expression was still as calm as water. She raised the dagger and sliced down once again. There's still nothing. Ziyin spread out both hands. Su Luo's expression carried an even more bit of graveness. Because in the wake of having sliced off 2 pieces of waste material, it was now already getting closer and closer to the core. Starting from now, every cut had to be done gently and cautiously. There could not be a little bit of a mistake. The dagger then peeled with 3 consecutive cuts. In a blink of an eye, only 1/3 of the original size of that huge, sealed source stone remained. Just at this time, a strong scent came out from inside the source stone. As expected, there is something. Ziyan's eyes suddenly lit up. She urged Su Luo, quickly, quickly, quickly. I can't hurry it up anymore. At this moment, Su Luo's forehead was already covered in a layer of fine beaded sweat. Her pair of eyes was as bright as stars, as she concentrated all her attention on that rock. The final cut. Su Luo took a deep breath, then she opened her eyes again. Her eyes were a sheet of pure cold and quiet. Just at this moment, the dagger in Su Luo's hands cut horizontally across. Slide, a sound rang. The 2 thumbs thick of source stone was evenly sliced across. The cut was tidy, like slicing tofu. A happy expression flashed through Ziyan's eyes. Not waiting for Su Luo to speak, she grabbed and tore open the stone that was cut. I really want to see just what exactly is concealed inside this sealed source stone. The source stone was torn open and a cavity appeared in it. And inside the cavity, a blue, fat and plump living creature was laying there. One could only see its pair of eyes were tightly closed, and its 2 chubby little hands, clenched into fists, were placed on its own chest. 1, little black hand, very bad luck. 2, little red hand, very lucky. Chapter 866, A Glimmer of Hope. 7. The round belly was still rising and falling. Obviously, this little thing was still alive. What is this? Ziyin couldn't bear it anymore and extended her finger to poke at that thing's cheek. Su Luo slanted her head and studied it for a while, eventually shaking her head. Haven't seen it before. Pudgy, round, looked strong and good-natured. It looked a little like a blue elf. How did it get sealed in there? Ziyin felt that this was extremely mystical. This cave was sealed away in the cliff, and this little thing again was sealed inside the source stone. This time, if it wasn't for the little divine dragons acting before thinking, this little thing would have had to spend countless years without being discovered by people. What I'm curious about is how is it still alive until now? Su Luo poked its melon-shaped head, curiously provoking that cute, infant-like elf. What I'm curious about is when it will wake up. Ziyin had a very good impression of this little thing. Before her words faded, a little paw suddenly appeared from the side, with a pout sound slapping the little elf's head. That force was really great. Su Luo and Ziyin didn't immediately check, thus allowing the little elf to be slapped like this. Su Luo dumbfoundedly stared at the little divine dragon. Why are you hitting it? That's right. The paw that extended out from the side was indeed the little divine dragon's. Ziyan's heart was extremely pained and hurriedly picked up the elf to hug it to her bosom. She rubbed that round head and did not forget to lecture the little divine dragon. Even though you're strong, you shouldn't wantonly hit people. Some people could die after one of your hits, you know? Little divine dragon opened his big, innocent, and limpid eyes and looked at Ziyin in confusion. It didn't understand. At this moment, the plump arm of the elf in Ziyan's bosom moved a little. Immediately after, that pair of eyes slowly opened. So as it turned out, waking it up by hitting it works. Su Luo realized suddenly and immediately rubbed the little divine dragon's head. This guy had inherited memory, so he understood a lot of things. The little elf laying in Ziyan's embrace was looking directly at her with its pair of clear monochrome eyes. Ziyin met its eyes. Su Luo was digging through the memories in her brain. Suddenly, a light turned on. Could it be an elemental elf? Elemental elf? Ziyin had astonishment written all over her face. It's very possible. Su Luo leaned close and carefully examined it. It is said that an elemental elf can provide its master with an infinite supply of spirit power. For most people, they needed to take spirit restoration pills to replenish their spirit powers. However, an expert in possession of an elemental elf didn't need to take a spirit restoration pill. Their elemental elf could provide a steady stream of spirit force to restore their powers. Isn't this being too blessed? Everyone knew how expensive high-grade spirit restoration pills cost. If in the future, there was no need for the spirit restoration pill to replenish her spirit powers, Ziyan's face suddenly lit up with excitement. Su Luo was also happy for her. She had a limitless supply of spirit restoration pills on her, so an elemental elf was of little use to her. But with regards to Ziyin, who was not apothecary material, it was indeed a rare to come by treasure. The little elemental elf tilted its round head and blinked its pair of huge, clear and monochrome eyes, showing its confusion and helplessness. "Io, then this is great. From now on?" Ziyin was unable to contain her joy. However, before she could finish speaking, this little elemental elf lowered its head and bit Ziyan's finger firmly, and in a flash, it darted away into the air at full speed. Don't just think that because its little figure was round, that it would be heavy, but it was extremely fast, like light flashing past them. Chapter 867, A Glimmer of Hope. 8. It never crossed anybody's mind that it would react like this. Su Luo was the first to react. Quickly, chase after it. Ziyin broke out of her stupor immediately after, and released her strides to chase out after it. With great difficulty, they had cut out a spirit pet. How could they let it run away just like this? The little divine dragon ran first, Su Luo followed close behind, and then followed by Ziyin. However, when Su Luo ran to the cave entrance, she saw someone holding her little divine dragon up by its tail. And that person was actually Fairy Yin Xia. "Ziyin, you go ahead and chase after it first," Su Luo calmly instructed Ziyin. But Ziyin was somewhat hesitant. "Fairy Yin Xia is a friend of my master's. She has something to say to me. You being here will not be convenient." Su Luo's face was calm, but whether her heart was also calm, only she would know. "Okay then, let's meet up at the foot of the mountain when the time comes." After Ziyin finished her sentence, she dashed in the direction where the little elemental elf fled to. On the empty grounds in front of the cliff wall, Su Luo stood calmly for a long time. The one and only Fairy Yin Xia was standing before her. Today's Fairy Yin Xia wore a blue, wide-sleeved and flowy fairy robe. Along with her creamy skin and fiery red lips, she looked like a blue rose demon. Su Luo was looking at her indifferently, neither haughtily nor humbly, she said. "The dragon race is naturally arrogant. With extremely huge ego, predecessor might as well let him go first. Are you threatening this fairy?" Fairy Yin Xia flicked her wide sleeve in a harsh and imposing manner that could dominate over the world. "This junior wouldn't dare. Junior just wouldn't want predecessor to make an enemy on all sides." Su Luo smiled faintly. "What you mean is that this fairy already has enough enemies?" Fairy Yin Xia's tone was emphatic and menacing. Su Luo's heart was somewhat annoyed, eyebrows knitting slightly. What was up with Fairy Yin Xia this time? They had met once before in the throne room. At that time, Fairy Yin Xia was cold and indifferent towards her. She had completely ignored her, but this time, why did it feel like she was intentionally targeting her? Could it be that Fairy Yin Xia was going through menopause? The corners of Su Luo's mouth curled up slightly. In order not to annoy this person with strong cultivation, but who was an emotionally unstable old woman, Su Luo smiled shallowly. "If predecessor has come to look for my master, then it is a bit unfortunate. Master went chasing after Ci Ning. This fairy knows." Fairy Yin Xia looked at Su Luo with a smile that was not quite a smile. She knew? If she knew, then why was she waiting here for? If she wanted, she should chase after him without delay. Su Luo silently cursed in her heart. This time, this fairy came especially to look for you. The corners of Fairy Yin Xia's eyes perked up a little and the smile on her face widened. Looking for me? Su Luo felt this was getting increasingly weirder. She absolutely had no relationship with this legendary, second most wanted Fairy Yin Xia. Right, exactly to look for you. Fairy Yin Xia tossed the little divine dragon into her bosom. Fine, go with this fairy. As she was talking, she turned to leave. What could this be regarded as? Su Luo stopped her footsteps. Don't know where predecessor is taking me? Su Luo didn't even refer to herself as junior anymore. Fairy Yin Xia's lips curled into a sneer. Is this you not wanting to go? Fairy Yin Xia's face clouded over, an imperceptibly strong, overbearing force pressing down on her. Before, Elder Luo had somewhat restrained himself, but the Fairy Yin Xia right now had burst out with a berserk pressure without a bit of restraint. Under this overbearing pressure, Su Luo only felt all of her bones echo with cracking sounds, as if her body would explode in the next second. Predecessor. Su Luo clenched her teeth. Subsequently, a mouthful of blood rushed out. The murderous-looking Fairy Yin Xia had no intention of sparing her. Su Luo was extremely puzzled. She had no idea where she had offended this unstable and likes-to-be angry old woman. Going or not? Fairy Yin Xia stood on top of a huge rock and looked down, casting sideway glances at Su Luo. The sun was setting in the west, the orange-yellow color, and the clouds tinged with sunset hues, dyed the blue of Fairy Yin Xia's clothes. It gave people a strange, cold feeling. Since predecessor generously wanted to invited me, Junior dares not disobey. Only, I haven't informed Master yet, so. Su Luo only felt that her blood was rolling around violently in her throat, so uncomfortable that she spitted out a mouthful of blood. No need for wasting words. Immediately come with me. Not waiting for Su Luo to speak, Fairy Yin Xia, in passing, picked Su Luo up, just like lifting up a little chick. After several rise and falls, Fairy Yin Xia's figure had already disappeared from this mountain range. Two blooming flowers, each on their own branch. Speaking of Ziyin, who had chased after that elemental elf. Even though in the beginning, the elemental elf's speed was very fast, however, after running for a while, it actually stopped. Ziyin thought that the elemental elf was trying to deceive her, so she carefully followed behind it. However, Ziyin discovered that the little thing in front of her had actually stopped to eat grass. Not only was it eating grass, but it also had its fat but raised as it buried its head inside. Don't know what it was doing. Ziyin walked up curiously and picked up its little head to turn it around. Only then did she discover this little elemental elf was actually eating the soil. The corner of Ziyin mouth pursed. Really? Speechless. So hungry to this degree? Ziyin helplessly looked at it. Huh. The wretched-looking little thing licked the mud in its palm. Looking at its pitiful appearance, Ziyin's motherly instinct burst out vigorously. Say, what do you want to eat? This older sister will make it for you. The little elemental elf, having never seen the world, pointed to the ground and the grass. 3 black lines appeared on Ziyin's forehead. The grass is for the cows, sheep, and horses to eat. You are the legendary elemental elf, understand? The kind that is very rare. How can you eat grass? This taste is really lacking. Ziyin earnestly instructed. The elemental elf's pair of dark eyes blinked a few times, not really understanding what Ziyin said. Before, when it was sealed inside, it was still an egg. This is the first time it had seen the world after being hatched from the egg. A child not taught by a mother simply didn't know what it ought to eat. Once she thought of this, Ziyin's motherly instinct gave out an even stronger flavor. Looks like you are a vegetarian. Ziyin held it in a spoiled manner. She stroked its little head. Let's go. Older sister will take you to eat some delicious foods. At this time, Ziyin had completely forgotten about Su Luo. Ziyin knew about the matter between Grandmaster Rong Yun and Fairy Yin Xia. So, when she saw Fairy Yin Xia take Su Luo away, she thought it was the concern from the older generation for the younger generation. As a result, she completely had no suspicions. Ziyin held the little elemental elf and leisurely strolled around inside the dark forest. With her strength, the surrounding magical beasts were completely of no threat to her. Her most important goal now was to coax the little elemental elf properly and let it voluntarily recognize her as its master. After strolling around in a loop, Ziyin brought the little elemental elf to sample the unique fruits in the dark forest. After strolling around a circle, they had collected more than a dozen kinds of fruits. Ziyin sat down on the grass and let the little elemental elf pick the fruit it liked to eat, while she herself took out a small paper crane from her sleeve. In fact, before, she had lied to Su Luo. This kind of paper crane she really didn't have anymore, but her third senior brother had given her a few of them. She had hidden them all on her body. Whoosh whoosh, Ziyin wrote a bunch of words on the paper crane. Finally, she muttered to the paper crane. Paper crane, oh paper crane, third senior brother must have waited for a long time. Quickly go. Then, Ziyin slowly blew a breath of air on the paper crane. Chapter 869, Fairy Yin Xia 1. The paper crane suddenly puffed up, becoming a lively and real white crane. It flapped its wings and flew towards the distant horizon. Right now, Ziyin didn't know that Su Luo had already been kidnapped by someone. The paper crane went against the wind, rapidly flying towards a distant place. In the distant extreme north of the land, on a snowy plateau that was endless white, in which one couldn't see the end of at one glance. In a certain icy and snow cave, Nangong Luyun, who was in closed-door seclusion, suddenly opened his eyes. He stretched out his right hand. This pair of hands was like white jade, translucent and smooth like icy snow. His fingers were elongated and refined. The paper crane flapped its wings, flying fast but correctly floating down into his palm. Nangong Luyun's perfect, water caltrop-shaped lips slowly curled up into a smile. This was Ziyan's letter. Ziyan had been curious all along, just what kind of woman that got him so willing to be obsessed with. She had chased after him to inquire many times, but he was too impatient to say. So, he simply set up a plan to get Ziyan to stay by Luo Girl's side and protect her. After all, his Luo Girl right now was still weak, but Ziyan was already a 7th rank. Ziyin wasn't the person with the best skills, but she had an advantage that no one else could substitute. She was a woman. Nangong Luyun did not like having a man following by his family's Luo Girl's side. Let alone with his understanding of Luo Girl, she would definitely like Ziyan's personality. Based on all the above reasons, Ziyin was schemed against by Nangong Luyun to place her by Su Luo's side. However, the matter of Ziyin going to steal the cup from Jade Lakesley family and chase to be killed was not related to Nangong Luyun. It was purely coincidental. Unfolding the paper crane, rows of black ink words appeared. Based on Nangong Luyun's vision, with one sweep, he had read it all. But seldom did he get news about his Luo Girl. How could he willingly swallow it up in one gulp to waste this opportunity? Nangong Luyun read the letter word by word, repeatedly reading it through 3 times. Every word was familiarly absorbed into his heart. Only then did he put away the paper crane. With gentle movements and full of satisfaction, he put it in his chest pocket. At this time, his mouth curled up into a satisfied smile because his Luo Girl was safe and sound. But his eyes also had a trace of regret. Without his protection, his Luo Girl must struggle along, just like this breaking through, really making his heart hurt. However, on the road to get stronger, who wouldn't have a bumpy road and learn through experience to finally be reborn through fire? Since she was determined to become a strong expert, then this was an unavoidable process, although his heart was distressed and unwilling to let go. But he could only watch her battle through hardship to learn from experience. Now, He could only hope that he would exit his closed-door cultivation quickly to return to her side earlier. From the sky, a scorching, thunderous lightning suddenly smashed down. Nangong Liuyun's eyes narrowed, forcibly bearing with this lightning strike that startled the heavens. As everyone knew, the lightning element was the strongest of all the elements in its attack power. But, at the same time, to upgrade it was also the hardest among all the elements. Another scorching lightning heavily struck down. Immediately, it was followed by densely packed and numerous ones that bombarded down. Nangong Liuyun's eyes were closed, but his mind was clear. He sat cross-legged, eyes tightly closed with his hands making complex seals, forming a dense defensive network. On the defense network, the lightning mingled with the sparks flying in all directions. It would shake a person to the core from watching this. At this time, he had entered the state of self-cultivation, because he must quickly cultivate to quickly exit, so he could personally accompany Su Luo. Only then would he feel assured. Speaking of Su Luo, she was forcefully lifted by Fairy Yin Xia all the way down the mountain. The speed was incredible fast. The wind from the mountain blew Su Luo's ink-like hair, immediately clearing up Su Luo's mind somewhat. If she was taken away by Fairy Yin Xia like this, then this was simply yelling to the sky without answer and screaming to the earth, being ineffective. Chapter 870, Fairy Yin Xia, 2. Su Luo's eyes narrowed slightly, a bright idea flashing through her mind. Ziyin was still on the mountain. As long as she left behind a signal to get her to notify beautiful teacher, then it would be an opportunity. Thinking up till this point, Su Luo's expression matched by pretending to be present. In fact, she had carefully entered her space to make something to leave as a signal. She searched for a long time inside her space, but discovered that the things inside were so few as to be pitiful. However, there was some grass, but if she tossed down some grass with one blow from the wind, it would be blown away. When the time came and it led to the wrong direction, then it would be really bad. Finally, in a corner, Su Luo found a sack of rice that hadn't been opened. This sack of rice was placed inside in preparation for unforeseen circumstances, and now, at this critical moment, then everything would depend on it. Taking advantage that Fairy Yin Xia had her guard down, Su Luo sneakily grabbed a handful of rice and occasionally would toss down 1 to 2 grains. The path down the mountain was craggy, however. With regards to Fairy Yin Xia's kind of expert, it was no problems at all. Waiting until they reached a wide road, Fairy Yin Xia's mouth hooked into a sneer. "Oh, you are such a clever girl." Su Luo's heart immediately shivered. Unconsciously, she was about to toss the half a handful of rice remaining into her space. Afterwards, her hand was grabbed as if by iron clamps, unable to move the slightest bit. Fairy Yin Xia stretched out her hand to grab Su Luo's right hand. Su Luo's skin was usually thick. Seeing she was about to be discovered, there was no sign of embarrassment on her face. She shallowly smiled and instead, in an inviting manner, said, "Predecessor, are you hungry yet? Should this junior cook for you?" Fairy Yin Xia really didn't expect Su Luo's response would be so shameless. Her eyes wrinkled slightly, her cold pupils watching Su Luo attentively. That woman was how noble, virtuous, and icily arrogant. Could this girl really be her daughter? Her appearance and character was not a bit similar. Could it be that she was mistaken? Fairy Yin Xia pondered while holding her chin and was silent, unspeaking. Suddenly, the corner of Fairy Yin Xia's mouth hooked up. How could Ci Ning be so easy to chase? Your master leaving this time. If he wanted to return, it would take more than half a year, at the least. So, if you wanted your master to come save you, then you better save the effort. Hearing this, Su Luo's heart rightfully shivered. If master didn't come, then it would be really hard for her to escape this old witch's clutches. Only, how could this old witch understand so much so clearly? Moreover, why didn't she chase after them? When Su Luo was just about to ask these questions, Fairy Yin Xia suddenly burst out in loud laughter. Su Luo suddenly understood. You have already known about the secret in that wall from earlier? Fairy Yin Xia also did not conceal it. Naturally, that was a trap you deliberately set up? Su Luo's eyes narrowed. If it was really like this, then that proved that this matter was carefully set up by the old witch and was not a scheme devised on the spot. Even the four top experts were fooled by her. It could clearly be seen what degree this person's wisdom had reached. Fairy Yin Xia icily arrogantly sneered. So what? The more Su Luo asked, the more her heart sank. This old witch took a lot of trouble to divert her master away. Could it all be for Fairy Yin Xia to catch her? If it was truly like this, then the matter could be very troublesome. It was not limited to only her. Ziyin could also be implicated. Su Luo's heart was nervous, but her face remained calm as before and indifferently smiled. Does predecessor not fear that my master would know, and an ill feeling will be born in his heart toward you? Su Luo was probing for Ziyan's safety, only she made a huge circle. Fairy Yin Xia seemed to like other people discussing Grandmaster Rong Yun with her. One could only see her give a light snort. So what if there will be ill feelings? In any case, he had gotten angry at me for so many years. What is the harm in adding a bit more? And what's more, the angrier he gets at me, then the more he will think about me. Even if I cannot become his darling, then I will become the mosquito sucking the blood from his heart. Chapter 871, Fairy Yin Xia 3. The corner of Su Luo's mouth pursed slightly. This person's way of thinking was really exotic. If the other side didn't love her, then she'd make him hate her. However, you should feel assured. Your master would never know that it was I who kidnapped you. How smart of a person was Fairy Yin Xia? She squinted her eyes and was able to understand Su Luo's thoughts. Su Luo's thoughts became a little sluggish, a kind of bad premonition floating up. Sure enough, she saw Fairy Yin Xia let out a gloomy, frosty smile. You are a smart person, naturally. You know that killing a person is the best way to seal their mouth. As expected, Fairy Yin Xia wanted to kill her. Loathsome girl, afraid? Fairy Yin Xia smiled strangely at Su Luo. Afraid? Who is not afraid of death? You are saying it as if you were not afraid of death. Su Luo sneered. If Fairy Yin Xia was not afraid of death, then she wouldn't have deliberately diverted Master away. Fairy Yin Xia nodded her head. You really are an honest girl. However, no matter how honest you are, it's still useless. This fairy must kill you this time, no matter what. A furious meaning immediately burst out from Su Luo's eyes. If you kill me, then I have no problem with it. However, let her go. Whatever you want to ask, I'll answer it. Are you threatening me? Fairy Yin Xia stared at her coldly. Her gloomy gaze stared at Su Luo frostily. I am just haggling with you over the price. Su Luo coldly snorted. No one can haggle with me. Also, no one can change my mind. Ha 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 ha. Fairy Yin Xia suddenly howled with laughter. Wind blew her long, mischievous black hair, which danced freely with the breeze, giving others a crazy and strange feeling. The hands at Su Luo's side were clenched tightly into fists. Hateful. The circumstances where Fairy Yin Xia was stronger, her strength was too weak. At every point, she was truly at a disadvantage. Su Luo's heart felt extremely helpless. Her determination to become stronger was getting more and more intense. She is from Purgatory City, and her background is not small. Could it be that you are not afraid of Purgatory City's revenge? She could not use force, so Su Luo took out Ziyan's master of the city, hoping that Fairy Yin Xia would hold back a little. However, Fairy Yin Xia had already entered a half state of madness and only burst out with ha ha ha, another howl of laughter. Predecessor. Su Luo's heart was very worried, so she angrily yelled. This loathsome girl is too noisy. Fairy Yin Xia sent a disdainful glare at Su Luo. In passing, her hand formed the shape of a knife to chop towards the back of Su Luo's neck. Su Luo, who always used this move to chop down others, her body softened and fell down to the ground. In fact, Those words of Su Luo's had threatened Fairy Yin Xia. Her strength on this continent was able to let her move unhindered in the whole world. However, that was under the circumstances that the people of the Purgatory City wouldn't come out. In fact, Purgatory City's formidable strength was there for everyone to see. They could send a random person out, and he could run amok on this continent without fear. So, when Fairy Yin Xia found out about Zi Yan's identity, misgivings were born in her heart.
Master.
A clear and attractive figure approached from afar and came closer. In the end, she calmly stood in front of Fairy Yin Xia. If Su Luo was still awake, she would discover that this female's figure was very familiar. Carry her back. Fairy Yin Xia coldly frowned. At the same time, her suspicious gaze shot towards this person in front of her. It's best if she is the person I'm trying to find, otherwise, humph. Fairy Yin Xia gave a heavy snort. She flung her sleeves, turned, and left abruptly. Seeing Fairy Yin Xia's arrogant backview as she left, the mysterious girl's hands at her side clenched into fists. A barely contained fury appeared on her face. Immediately after, she lowered her head to look at Su Luo, who had fallen on the ground. The corner of her mouth hooked into a very fierce, malicious cold intent. Slut. Following which, she sent a kick towards Su Luo. The soul that was polluted with soil left an imprint on Su Luo's dress. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.